And now I gotta hit the mute. Get that man some grace, okay? I don't know what happened, but it's happening. Okay, that bus driver said y'all gonna get this music today. Now it could just be a good old hoot and holler session, cause that just might be his song. In the meantime, my ass over here at 10, 14, 10, 13, just a running my mouth and forgot to hit the go live button. And I'm also scooting y'all over so y'all can be a little closer, you know. So I'm kind of low key rearranging this here desk. So if I look up and y'all start seeing the hello gorgeous sign again as I'm moving this over. Give us a little bit more room and I can analyze and watch this at the same time because I need to pay attention to something. Because you know, when folks think they got the latest, greatest in technology, and they only know the latest, greatest in technology, and then that latest, greatest go out, you know, not everybody know how to do things from scratch, and now everybody's scrambling because they don't really know how to do this. They just know how to put stuff in the spreadsheet. They don't know how to build it with a formula, you know?
Discuss the case among yourselves.
Okay, let me move y'all.
Or discuss it with anyone else. Or do any independent research while you're away from it. All right, thank you. State, you may call your next witness.
State calls Kirsten Kevin.
Oh, you said what Kirsten knows about this? All right, Kirsten.
You state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter, please.
My name is Kirsten Kevin. Last name is Kevin.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon.
Where do you work?
I work at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or FDLE. I work in the Orlando Regional Operations Center in the biology or DNA section.
And how long have you worked for FDLE in that capacity?
I've worked at FDLE since 2007.
Can you describe for the jury your educational background and training that allows you to do that job?
Sure. I have a Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences from Florida State University. And additionally, I took graduate level coursework at the University of Central Florida for forensic science. In addition to that, I underwent a training program at FDLE that lasted a little over a year and consisted of 2 phases. The first phase, I performed kind of mock samples, so samples that I knew the origin of, but DNA testing. I took both written and oral exams and read extensive scientific literature. In the second phase, I actually did casework under the supervision of a qualified analyst.
Can you describe for the jury what you do on a day-to-day basis in biology?
Yes, I examine items of evidence for the possible presence of biological materials like blood, semen, saliva, and skin cells. I then attempt to obtain a DNA profile and compare it to standards in my case.
Can you estimate approximately how many times you've done that very process in your career?
It's been thousands.
I think you might have mentioned earlier, do DNA analysts such as yourself go through regular proficiency training at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I am required to take 2 proficiency tests a year.
You passed those tests?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever testified in a court regarding providing opinion testimony in the area of DNA analysis and or statistics?
Yes, I have.
Can you estimate about how many times?
I've testified in court hearings or trials 87 times.
All right.
Over here in Orange County?
Yes,
Probably most of them.
a lot of them.
Somebody else?
Can you explain to the jury what DNA actually is and
Oh, what's DNA?
Sure.
Wow.
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's essentially what makes us all who we are. We get our DNA from our parents, half from our mother and half from our father. The DNA in our bodies remains the same throughout our bodies until death. Additionally, no two individuals other than identical twins have the same DNA.
can you describe the method or the testing method that FDLE uses when you analyze DNA?
Did you want the name or would you like the steps?
Both.
Okay. At FDLE, I perform what's called STR DNA testing. It stands for short tandem repeats. Essentially, these STRs are small areas of DNA that vary highly from individual to individual. The process consists of 4 steps. In the first step, it's extraction, where I get DNA out of the cell and into solution. The second step is called quantitation, where I determine how much DNA is present in that sample. The third step is amplification, where I make millions and millions of copies of the DNA in order to test it. And the fourth and last step is interpretation, where I obtain a DNA profile sometimes I don't obtain a DNA profile, but ideally obtain a DNA profile and can make comparisons.
How long has this method of DNA testing been in existence?
That I don't know. It's been a very long time.
This case happened back in 2002. Was that method in existence or a similar method back then?
Yes.
Okay. Are there things or conditions that can destroy DNA?
Well, heat, light, and moisture can degrade DNA, meaning it gets less informative. There's less information that we can derive from the DNA. If you're talking about like some harsh chemicals like bleach can destroy DNA.
When you say extreme heat, what about fire?
It's possible, yes.
What are controls?
Controls are something that I run alongside all of my samples. I have a positive control that consists of a known DNA profile. So at the end of all my process, I expect to see that DNA profile. I also run a negative control, which conversely has no DNA in it. So I expect to see no DNA profile at the end.
Are those controls put in place during the DNA testing method to make sure that the instruments being used in the process is working properly?
Yes, in addition to that, the reagents are working as they should, the chemicals, and that I'm doing the steps that I'm supposed to be doing.
What steps can you take when analyzing DNA to prevent things like contamination?
So I examine items separate. Say I'm working a case with multiple items. I'll open only one item at a time. I will also work the known items away from the unknown items, either in time or space, sometimes both. I wear PPE or personal protective equipment like gloves, mask, a hairnet, depending on what I'm actually working on. There's cleaning and decontamination using chemicals. There's a whole lot of other things as well.
Are those precautions that you take things done by pretty much all analysts and all accredited labs?
I can't speak.
Are they supposed to be?
They're supposed to be. I can't speak for other labs, of course, but that's what's done in our labs by all analysts.
Does FDLE hold any accreditations or certificates?
Yes, FDLE is accredited by the American National Standards Institute National Accreditation Board.
Is it also standard in DNA analysis to perform a statistical calculation to give meaning or weight to your results?
Yes, if I obtain a match or an inclusion, I am required to report a statistic.
Are you trained in the statistical analysis and things like that?
Yes.
This time, Your Honor, I'd request this witness be permitted to give opinion testimony in the area of DNA analysis as well as statistics.
Any voir dire?
No, Your Honor, no objection.
All right, she'll be able to render her opinion in that area.
Did your lab receive some evidence in the case of State of Florida versus Demorris Hunter, Orlando Police Department case 2002-187395?
Yes.
And did your lab also receive known standards, DNA standards represented to be from Demorris Hunter and Theresa Green?
Yes.
And for our terminology today, what is meant by a known DNA standard?
A known DNA standard is a DNA profile that I know the origin of. For instance, if you were to take a cotton swab the inside of my cheek and run that for DNA, you know it came from me. That can be used as my standard to make comparisons to unknowns in a case.
Unknowns meaning samples collected from a crime scene like that?
Samples where I don't know the donor, the origin of that DNA.
You may.
Showing listed marked as State's Exhibit 15, a known standard, DNA standard represented being from Theresa Green, as well as State's 34, a known DNA standard collected from Demorris Hunter. Did your lab receive those items of evidence?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
I have, I'm sorry. There is the FDLE barcode label with our unique FDLE case number, along with there are handwritten initials and date, and also the case number and the exhibit numbers.
Were those two items analyzed for the presence of DNA?
They were.
Would that have been using the same procedure you just described to the jury?
Yes.
Would that same procedure be used for all the different exhibits we're going to talk about today?
Yes.
When those two items were analyzed for the presence of DNA, what were the results?
Complete DNA profiles were obtained.
First of all, what is a DNA profile?
A DNA profile is
What's the man in there?
it's represented by a picture or an electropherogram. Your DNA profile is your unique DNA, I don't want to say this word, but fingerprint, for lack of a better word. It's representation of your DNA.
What does a complete profile mean?
A complete profile means that there is information at all of the locations tested.
Likewise, what does a partial profile mean?
A partial profile doesn't have complete information at all the areas tested.
If you only obtain a partial profile, does that affect your ability to perform DNA analysis as well as a comparison?
It could, if it's a very limited DNA profile, then I might not be able to make any comparisons, but a partial DNA profile should be able to be compared to another DNA profile as long as the other one is interpretable or I can make comparisons to it.
Did your lab also receive some evidence collected from an apartment complex as well as from a white Oldsmobile recovered from a Walgreens parking lot?
Yes.
I want to start with the evidence recovered from the apartment complex, specifically the victim's apartment, apartment number 11.
You may.
Showing you State's Exhibit 28, some cotton swabs collected from a watch that was found on the bathroom sink. I'm also showing for the record State's Exhibit 23, photograph number 3. Did your lab receive several DNA swabs collected from a Seacoast watch?
Yes.
And were those swabs analyzed for the presence first of human blood?
They were analyzed for the chemical indications of blood.
How is that done? What test is used?
So at FDLE, we perform what's called a Kastle-Meyer test. It's a color change test. Ultimately, if something gives chemical indications for the presence of blood, that color change is pink. And if it does not give a color change or gives a color change outside of the time frame that we're testing, it is considered negative for chemical indications.
That exhibit I just handed to you, number 28, how many different swabs were in that exhibit?
There were 2.
And what were the results of the blood test on each?
So the first one, it was positive, meaning it gave chemical indications for the presence of blood.
What about the other one?
The second one, it did not give chemical indications for the presence of blood.
Was any further testing done on the sample that did not give chemical indications for the presence of blood?
There was no further testing.
And why would there be no testing done on that one?
If something is represented as being blood and it doesn't give chemical indications, that leads us to believe that there might not be biological material and therefore no DNA from that sample.
So in this case, did you focus your attention on the swab that tested positive for the presence of blood?
That swab was carried through the DNA process.
What were the results of the DNA analysis of that specific swab collected from the Seco watch?
That particular swab resulted in a mixture from at least 2 individuals and including 1 male individual at least.
What is a mixture?
A mixture is just DNA from more than 1 person.
How can you tell that at least one of the contributors to that mixture was male?
So there are
Sir.
gender markers. So in addition to your unique DNA profile, there are also gender markers that are present. If an XY is present, that is consistent with being a biological male DNA profile.
Ooh, don't say that too loud.
You
You
said there was a mixture containing 2 individuals. Could both of them been male?
construct.
It's possible, but there was only 1 partial DNA profile that could be resolved, and that was consistent with being a male individual. The additional contributor or contributors could not be interpreted.
So based on that answer, are you sometimes able to separate the DNA profiles that gave rise to this mixture, separate them out?
Sometimes, yes.
Was that able to be done in this case? Was that mixture able to be separated into 2 distinct DNA profiles?
It was able to be separated, but not into 2 distinct DNA profiles. It resulted in a partial major DNA profile, and the additional or minor contributor or contributors, they were not interpretable. So I couldn't tell you a DNA profile for whoever else made up that DNA mixture.
What is a major contributor?
A major contributor is
Wasn't enough. The little tiny ass watch wasn't.
someone who donates more DNA to that mixture.
Did you compare the DNA profiles in that mixture, specifically the major contributor, to the known DNA profiles of Theresa Green and Demorris Hunter?
Yes, I did.
And what were your results?
So I obtained a match between that partial DNA profile and the DNA profile for Demorris Hunter.
Did you perform a statistical analysis to determine the likelihood that the Demorris Hunter was the contributor to that major DNA profile?
I did.
Can you explain just briefly how you do that?
So a likelihood ratio is an explanation of my evidence given 2 separate, often competing scenarios. I use a statistical, it's basically like a statistical calculator to obtain a likelihood ratio.
This
When
might
you
be the
did
milk
that statistical analysis,
This don't sound
ratio,
good.
what were your results as far as the likelihood that Demorris Hunter was the contributor to that major DNA profile found in the watch?
May I refer to my report?
If you refresh your memory with the court's permission.
You may.
No, we didn't. The case didn't sound super strong. If he is the partial match, does that sound better?
Okay.
I still-
The observed partial major DNA profile is 5.5, approximately 5.5 million times more likely if the DNA profile originated from Mr. Hunter than if it originated from an unrelated individual.
5.5 million or billion? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, billion. I apologize.
So can you explain generally what that means?
So a likelihood ratio, again, explains my evidence given 2 scenarios. One scenario is that it came from an unrelated individual, and the other scenario is that the sample originated from Mr. Hunter. It is 5.5 billion times more likely to occur if the DNA profile originated from Mr. Hunter than from an unrelated individual.
Were you able to identify the minor contributor to the mixture that we've been talking about?
I was not.
Did you compare the DNA profile from that minor mixture to the known DNA profile of Theresa Green?
I compared the partial major DNA profile because that was the only part that could be compared, and she was excluded.
So there was just not enough information in the minor profile for you to be able to do anything?
Correct.
Okay. Approach again, Your Honor.
You may.
Showing you what's been introduced in evidence, it states Exhibit 30, a blood sample taken from the southeast bedroom door trim of apartment 11. Did your lab receive that item of evidence?
Yes, it did.
Was that item of evidence also analyzed for whether to determine if it gave chemical indications of blood?
Yes, it did.
What were the results?
It gave chemical indications for the possible presence of blood.
Was that item then further analyzed for the presence of DNA?
Yes.
What were the results?
Again, may I refer to my report?
Yes, ma'am.
I obtained a complete DNA profile consistent with a female individual.
Did you compare that DNA profile consistent with the female individual to the known DNA profile of Theresa Green?
I did.
What were your results?
The observed DNA profile is approximately 590 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Ms. Green than from an unrelated individual.
And I assume that since this profile that we just talked about originated from a female individual, Mr. Hunter would have been excluded from being a contributor to that.
That is correct.
Showing you what's been introduced into evidence, it states 19 of one sample taken from master door frame. Again, of apartment number 11, the victim's apartment. Was this swab also analyzed for the presence of blood?
Yes, it was.
What were the results?
It gave chemical indications for the presence of blood.
Was a DNA analysis performed on that exhibit as well?
Yes.
What were the results?
If I may refer to the report.
So far, we have DNA from the watch that was found on the bathroom sink, and the blood on the wall, I believe, in the hallway.
So due to the limited nature of the results obtained, it was not interpretable.
What does that mean that it was too limited?
So it could mean that there's not enough DNA information. Well, it does mean there's not enough DNA information. Sometimes the signal isn't strong enough. Sometimes there's not enough locations. There are essentially a few different ways that could occur, but the result is the same. There is no ability to compare that DNA profile to anything.
So there's not enough DNA or not enough information for you to be able to do anything with it.
Correct.
Okay. Does that mean that the crime scene technician who collected this swab did something wrong? Or is that just kind of the truth?
I wouldn't know how collections were made, but I have seen lots of limited DNA results.
I want to turn now to some DNA swabs that were collected from the outside door trim of apartment number 12. Also showing photograph 3 of states 21. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Showing you, I'm sorry, states 20 is the photograph. I'm showing you states exhibit 21, swab taken from the door trim outside apartment number 12. Was that item received by your lab and DNA analysis conducted?
Yes,
Okay. Actually, before we get to DNA analysis, was that item tested for the presence of blood?
yes.
What were the results?
It gave chemical indications for the presence of blood.
That one was positive for blood?
May I refer to my notes?
If I refresh your memory, yes, ma'am.
And this is Q11.
Yes.
I have that it gave chemical indications for the presence of blood.
Did you, was it additional, was DNA analysis performed on that item?
DNA analysis was performed on the item, but no results were obtained.
Why would no results be obtained?
It depends. It's possible that it was possibly blood, but not from a human being. There might not be enough information. If there was DNA, maybe there's just not enough information to be obtained and interpreted.
So regardless of the reason, not enough information for you to do anything with?
Correct.
One more time, Your Honor.
May.
Showing you what's been introduced into evidence as states exhibit 6, a sun shield collected from the trunk of the victim's Oldsmobile. And also showing photograph 15 of states 3. Was this item received by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's lab?
Yes,
Was that item analyzed for the presence of blood?
it was.
And how was that done?
How is the testing done?
Well, were swabs collected from this item by FDLE?
3 swabs were collected from this item.
How generally would you use a swab to collect a portion of evidence from that item?
I would use a cotton tip swab that is in our lab. It's a sterile cotton tip swab. I would add deionized water to it and rub whatever area of staining that I'm interested in, let it dry, and then proceed with the DNA process.
When those 3 swabs were analyzed for the presence of blood, what were the results?
They gave chemical indications for the presence of blood.
Were those swabs then analyzed for the presence of DNA?
I believe all 3 were, if I may check my report.
Yes, ma'am.
So far,
Yes, all 3 were run through the DNA process.
we're on the 5th area tested. The watch did test positive for blood, and there was a mixture of two different folks in there, one of which was identified as male, and then it matched the partial profile that was found off the watch did match Demorris. Remember, the watch was on the bathroom sink, I believe. And then the blood on the wall was Theresa's. 3rd area and 4th area were uninterpretable. And now we're at the sun shield of the Oldsmobile, where they took 3 swabs. It was positive for blood, and now she's about to say what DNA was in the car on the sun shield. Cool. Good.
And what were the results of the DNA analysis of those 3 swabs?
So the first 2 swabs, I believe they were A and B. Yes, A and B gave limited DNA results, so I couldn't make any interpretations.
What about the 3rd swab?
So the 3rd swab, I obtained a partial DNA profile, consistent with a female individual.
Did you compare that DNA profile consistent with a female individual to the known DNA profile of Theresa Green?
I did.
What were your results?
The partial DNA profile matched the profile from Theresa Green.
Did you perform a statistical analysis to determine the likelihood that Theresa Green was the contributor to that DNA?
Yes, I did perform a statistical analysis.
What were your results?
If I may refer one more time.
Well, the statistics that have you just like, Jesus Christ.
It's approximately, the observed DNA profile is approximately 170 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Ms. Green than from an unrelated individual.
And again, I'm assuming because that DNA profile originated from a female individual, Demorris Hunter was excluded as being a contributor.
That is correct.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you have any other questions, Your Honor?
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Um,
There.
So you were not provided with standards for anyone else other than Demorris and Andy Hunter and Theresa Green. Is that correct?
Those were the only standards that DNA analysis was performed on.
Right. I understand you don't do any investigation outside of the lab. It's whatever is given to you is what you use to do your analysis, correct?
Correct.
So in summation, the Q1, it was referring to your report, Q1 showed some DNA from Mr. Hunter. Q2 showed some DNA from Miss Green, and Q10C showed DNA of Miss Green as well.
Yes.
All right, that's all I have.
Any direct? Any questions from the jury? May this witness be excused?
She may. Thank you.
You are free to go, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
What?
Call your next
Oh,
witness.
Was this the ME?
Thank you, Judge Ryan. You solemnly swear affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Sir, could you state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter, please?
Gary Lee Utz, UTZ.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
How are you employed, sir?
I'm a forensic pathologist.
Are you still, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I have my own company providing forensic pathology services almost entirely to a small county in Ohio.
How long have you been doing that, sir?
I've been doing that job since September of 2020.
Oh, what else?
Prior to that, I worked here in Orlando between April of 2008 and August of 2020 as the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for District 9.
And District 9 is Orange and Osceola counties, right?
It is.
Now, before coming to the Orange Osceola County Medical Examiner's Office, were you previously working as a medical examiner?
Well, we didn't call it that, but functionally it was the same. I worked at the Hamilton County Coroner's Office in Cincinnati, Ohio,
How long did you work there?
about 10 years.
And did you work anywhere before Hamilton County, Ohio as a forensic pathologist?
No, that was my first position after training.
Okay. And since you talk about training, what is your educational background, sir?
So I have all of my training from the University of Cincinnati in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have a bachelor's degree in biology, a doctor of medicine degree. And then I did 5 years of training in anatomic and clinical pathology, a year of training in surgical pathology. And then finally, my last year of training was in forensic pathology at the Hamilton County Coroner's Office.
Okay, now, doctor, you've talked about 4 areas of pathology. Are those subspecialties within the field of pathology?
Well, pathology is usually divided into 2 large groups, anatomic pathology and clinical pathology.
Okay.
Anatomic pathology is the study of a tissue with the idea of finding a diagnosis and also includes autopsy pathology. Forensic pathology is a subspecialty of that, and I just prefer to think of that as the investigation of human death.
Okay. How does one become qualified to be a forensic pathologist, Dr. Utz?
Well, you have to have a degree in medicine, a medical degree, MD or DO in this country. Then you have to have completed at least an anatomic pathology residency program. I think the minimum there is 3 years. It's a little bit different now from when I trained. And then you have to complete a fellowship. I suppose you could practice forensic pathology without completing the fellowship, but you could not be certified by the American Board of Pathology.
Okay, that raises 2 questions. Are you certified by the American Board of Pathology?
I am.
Now, doctor, what is a fellowship?
Fellowship is simply a period of training, usually in a sub-discipline. It could be forensic pathology. It could be anatomic pathology subspecialty like I did, surgical pathology or cytopathology. It's a very common in medical training. Some fellowships might be longer than a year. Neuropathology fellowships, I think, are generally 2 years.
And is this, and forgive me if I'm oversimplifying this, is a fellowship while you're working with someone who's more experienced, or how does that work?
Usually, that's the idea, that you would be brought into an organization. In my case, it was the Hamilton County Coroner's Office, and I worked with pathologists that were much more experienced. I had essentially no experience in that, so they had years of experience, and they have to meet certain requirements as far as the training, certain number of cases that need to be done, and types of cases that need to be done.
And you had to do all of this before they actually, I guess, turned you loose on your own to work independently?
Well, it's medicine. It's not healthcare. So no, they turn you loose pretty much right away.
Okay.
Just like treating live patients.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, doctor. Let me, just to make sure, you said the Hamilton County Coroner's Office in Ohio, that is, for our purposes, the same as a medical examiner's office. Is that correct?
It was when I worked there. Our coroner, though elected, was himself a forensic pathologist. He was board certified in forensic pathology. So I think we functioned pretty much like a medical examiner's office does here in the state of Florida.
And let me ask it this way, just to make sure the record is clear. Were your duties at the Hamilton County Coroner's Office essentially the same as those at the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes,
Doing about the same thing?
yes,
And you were the deputy chief medical examiner in your last, when you hired or left Orange County, were you not?
yes.
Do you have a judgment, Dr. Utz, as to how many autopsies you have performed over the course of your career as a pathologist?
Well, autopsies alone is somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000. And in addition to that, I've been primarily responsible for at least 10,000 death investigations. Some of those require just review of records, some require just a review of the body and records, and then some required a full autopsy.
Exactly.
Okay, and not all autopsies are necessarily full autopsies, are they?
Well, the vast majority in the offices where I've worked have been that we would very occasionally in Orlando do a head-only autopsy if we feel that someone may have fallen and sustained a head injury. I think now they probably just do a CT scan. But for the most part, yeah, we didn't do any partial autopsies for the 10 years that I worked in Cincinnati.
Do you have a judgment, Dr. Utz, as to how many times you have been allowed to testify in court and offer an opinion as a forensic pathologist?
Well, I don't keep track of it, but it's hundreds of times.
Your Honor, at this time, I would tender Dr. Utz as a witness qualified to offer an opinion in the field of forensic pathology.
Any question?
Ooh, Lord.
All right. He will be permitted to render his opinion in that area.
Dr. Utz, in your capacity as a medical examiner in the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office, did you have the occasion to be tasked with reviewing the autopsy materials and records on an individual known as Theresa Ann Green?
I did.
And you were not the original pathologist who did the hands-on autopsy of Ms. Green, were you?
I was not.
Do you know who the original medical examiner / pathologist was?
Dr. Sashi Gore.
And at the time that you were tasked with reviewing the files and records from the Theresa Ann Green autopsy, was Dr. Sashi Gore still employed with the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office?
No, my understanding is that he left the office around 2004. I started there in April of 2008.
So you do not know Dr. Gore?
I do not.
When you were tasked with reviewing the records and coming to an opinion with respect to the autopsy of Theresa Ann Green, how did you go about undertaking that assignment?
Well, I was approached informally by a state attorney in this jurisdiction, and she asked me if I would look at an old case that Dr. Gore had done. So I don't remember the exact order, but I would have requested the file, or perhaps I got the file myself from our records department. And I'm pretty sure then that it did not have photos, and I didn't have access to photos that went back that far electronically. So I would have had to ask our records person to get me the photos of Mr. Tony Miranda. I reviewed the photos, the records, and subsequently the histologic sections, the slides that were prepared by Dr. Gore, and then discussed the case with the prosecutor.
So you had to have film developed, I guess, correct?
I don't remember now if they were Kodachromes and they were converted or if they already existed in digital format. Autopsy was 2002.
Kind of right on the cusp, isn't it?
I know at that time in Ohio, we had digital photography. But I don't know what they had at that time in Orlando.
Okay. And you mentioned histologic slides. What are those?
Well, in pathology, we can take a small piece of tissue from various organs or soft tissue or even bone and subject it to various chemicals and then stain it and then look at it through a microscope.
Okay, and this is a permanent thing, I guess. Once the slide is prepared, does it last indefinitely or?
They can last a long time. Eventually, when they're mounted, they tend to dry out, but I have some of my own that are 15 or 20 years old. They still look pretty good.
During the course of your work in reviewing the autopsy of Theresa Ann Green, did you have the occasion to review some photographs that had been taken at the time of the postmortem examination?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm showing the witness what's marked as AN Alpha November for identification and exclusion to show the defense counsel. Doctor, let me get you to take a look at these photographs and look through them and tell me if you identify them. You can recognize them.
Yes.
Do you recognize those photographs as the ones that you reviewed in connection with your work in this case?
They are.
Your Honor, at this time, I would offer State's Exhibit AN for identification into evidence as the next consecutive number.
No objection, Your Honor.
AN will be admitted as State's Exhibit 40.
I may approach a witness again, Your Honor.
You may.
Show a few hand up behind you, Doctor. And just indicate back on the big screen. Publish, Your Honor.
All right.
You may.
Dr. Gore, I'm sorry, Dr. Utz, my apologies. What are we looking at in this photograph, sir?
This is the deceased. She's looks like she's still got this sheet that she was found in, wrapped in that. She's still got undergarment, and you can see her hand is on her abdomen. This is her belly here, and it's left an imprint. You can actually look. You can actually see fingertip ridges on this skin here. And then this area here where it looks like the skin is peeling, that's exactly what it's doing. It's called skin slippage, and it happens when we decompose, or sometimes it'll happen if you're just exposed to, for instance, here, it happens a lot when people die and they're exposed to hot pavement. A superficial layer of the skin, the epidermis, will separate from the underlying layer. And in a dark-skinned person, the pigment is in that superficial layer. So you can see when it's peeled back, it's pale underneath.
Doctor, let me ask you this. What causes the fingerprint impressions to have been left on what I guess is her abdomen?
Yes,
What caused that?
it's just a matter of pressure, I think, along with softening of the tissue in the early stages of decomposition.
Had she been lying face down, or do you know?
That's my understanding, is that she was face down in the trunk of a car.
Is there anything else in this particular photograph that's significant to your opinions and conclusions?
No.
Moving to photograph number 2, what are we seeing in this photograph, Doctor?
This is the same photograph. Now the hand has just been moved to one side, and you can still see the imprint of the fingers, and you can see more of the area of skin slippage.
Moving to photograph number 3, again, numbers being in the lower right-hand corner. What are we looking at in this photograph, Doctor?
So this is the deceased. You can see that she's now face up. She's on a blue background, which is something that we did in the office, and apparently they did even then. Takes a little bit better picture. And you can see that there's some trauma here some apparent trauma. I know she's been face down in the trunk of a car, so she's starting to decompose, but I think there's more than just a decomposition here. You can see there's something going on here with the lip, with the eye. These are possibly contusions here. Hard to say for sure. You can see more skin slippage here on the left and on the right. There's a little mark here. Difficult to tell exactly what's happening.
Moving on to photograph number 4. What are we looking at in this photograph, Doctor?
So this is a very, it'd be possible to turn the lights down?
Jesus. Well, this jury ain't gonna be right.
That's a little bit.
Yep. Jury.
Now that's, well, I guess I'll just roll with this. So you can see now this is the right side of the decedent's face. And you can see there's some skin slippage here. There's a dark area here, which was described later as an area of hemorrhage. There are also some marks here on the side of the neck, which look like scratches to me. And I'm suspicious of this area here, these dark areas of the skin where the superficial layer has been peeled back. These look like contusions to me. You can see change during the decomposition process, and we see it on the opposite side, but it doesn't quite look like this.
Moving to
I don't think
photograph number 5.
for the other girlfriend.
What is this photograph?
I think we in the
So this is the left side of the face.
Yep.
Here you can see what I was talking about, how there are some changes here that are probably associated with decomposition. They look a little bit different on this side than they do on the other side. So I think the other side is most likely represents some area of injury, trauma, like a bruise.
Photograph number 6. What do we see in this photograph, Doctor?
So this is the back of the neck, right here. That's the hairline in the back. There's the right ear. Here's those areas that I said look to me like scratches. They look like, frankly, they kind of look like fingernail marks on the right back of her neck. And there's another area of abrasion. Abrasion is a superficial injury, like a skinned knee. It's a type of blunt trauma. That's an abrasion there. I think these are linear abrasions. And I don't think I can say too much else about this photo.
Doctor, you mentioned fingernail scratches. In your experience as a forensic pathologist, when would it be likely or reasonable to expect to find fingernail marks or scratch marks on the neck of a deceased victim?
Well, you can see marks like that if they scratch themselves or if somebody scratched them. But in the context of a person who's deceased and secreted in the trunk of a car, you're going to be looking for evidence of strangulation. And in this case, and in any case of strangulation, you can have marks from fingernails both of the person that's doing the strangling and the person that's being strangled, as they will try to remove the person's hand or arm. I can't look at any of these injuries, and even in most cases, I can't reconstruct, what happened. I know people that say that they can do that. I cannot do that. I'm not sure that they can do it.
Would it be fair to say that you can't look at an individual photograph and say, well, this is what happened based on this photograph?
In a case like this, I think that's true.
One would have to look at all of the facts and circumstances, including the circumstances under which the body was recovered, other facts known, in order to come to an opinion as a forensic pathologist. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think
Now, Doctor, let me ask you this. Based on your examination of the photographs, and I understand that you did not actually see eyes on Ms. Green, Is there a difference in the severity of her injuries from the right side of her neck to the left side of her neck?
Yes,
And which side is more severely injured?
the right side.
And Doctor, moving on to the next photograph, photograph number 7. What are we seeing in this photograph?
This is the same orientation. We're looking at, this is sort of the middle of the back of her neck. Here's those scratches on the right side. And then here are another couple of small abrasions over here behind the left ear.
Not your squeaker.
And what is the larger, darker colored area? And it's about to the, just to the right of her, well, up and just to the right of the middle of her neck, up right below the hairline.
This, that's the area of, I think it's probably an abrasion and a small bruise. We saw that in the previous photo.
Could that be caused by manual strangulation?
It could be caused by many things, but strangulation is one of them.
Okay. Moving on to photograph number 8. What are we looking at here?
This is the hyoid bone that has been removed during the autopsy.
Doctor, where is the hyoid bone located in a human being?
It sits high up in the neck, just about the level of your jaw, up high, protected. It's a U-shaped bone. This is the front part of it.
So that would be the part, the bottom part of the picture would be the part that's pointing toward the chin.
Correct.
And what is significant about this photograph, and what does this photograph show in addition to simply the removed hyoid bone that has tissue attached to it still?
Well, I'm not sure because I wasn't there, and I'm not sure what Dr. Gore is showing here. I'm sure he's directing the tech to take the photograph, or perhaps he's taking the photograph. I don't know. There's no documentation of that, which is not unusual. There's a pointer here. He may be pointing to this area here. It's a little bit darker than this side. That could just be a shadow. There's a little area here that looks like there could be hemorrhage. I can't say for certain.
Okay. And moving on to the next photograph, photograph number 9. What is this a photograph of, sir?
This is the same. This is the same bone. This is the hyoid. This, I believe, is the right side. You can see now that there is more dark area here. This, I think, is hemorrhage. You have to be careful, especially in a person that's decomposing. Sometimes you will get things that look like hemorrhage. One of the ways to tell that apart is to look and see, well, does all of the tissue look like that? Does it all look hemorrhagic? Does it all look like there's blood around there? In this case, to me, it doesn't. This side of it doesn't look the same as this side. Therefore, I could conclude, based on this and other things in the autopsy, that I think there's some evidence of injury here.
And the injury that you believe identified is where the pointer is directed to the right side of the hyoid bone.
Yes.
And this is flipped over, so the pointer is pointing at the right-hand side of the right side of the victim's face, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
And Doctor, I'm moving on to photograph number 10. What is this?
This is a hyoid bone that now has no tissue, no soft tissue surrounding it. And you can see from this that the hyoid is actually 3 separate bones. It starts out this way. Okay, and there's little joints here, and they move a little bit. And when you do an autopsy, you can grab the tips here and you can flex them until at a certain age, maybe 40, sometimes never. Then these joints will calcify, they will fuse, and this becomes functionally like one U-shaped bone. But in this case, they haven't fused. There's 3 separate bones here.
And moving on to photograph number 11. What is this, sir?
It's the same thing. You can see it a little bit better now. He's turned the body over and you can see the greater cornu on either side. And you can see that this would have been a joint space here, but the soft tissue, including the joint capsule, has been dissolved and we're left with just the bones.
And again, photograph number 12.
Same thing. And I don't believe these bones are injured. I don't see any evidence.
There's no fracture to them.
I don't believe so, no.
Then people sat up there in our face and said that them apartment doors are no more than 2 to 3 feet away from each other. You mean to tell me that there's holes in the walls? He done lost some blood, she done lost some blood, and nobody heard a thing. Nobody heard nothing, but you carry your ass out the house after 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and this random person from downstairs that y'all don't even really know his real damn name tell you, follow me in this van. I ain't following you nowhere. Good night, sir.
Do you believe there's a dislocation?
I suspect that's what Dr. Gore was taking a photograph of.
And
Because the dark area that looks like hemorrhage would have been right in the vicinity of the joint capsule.
I believe that's the last photograph. Yes, it is, Doctor. We can have the lights back up, Judge, please. Thank you, ma'am. Now, Doctor, let me ask you this. In the context of what we're talking about here, is it a critical distinction as to whether or not the hyoid bone was dislocated or fractured?
It doesn't really, I mean, if you're talking about making a diagnosis of strangulation, you don't have to have any injuries. We like to see injuries and we like to document them. They don't really directly involve the death of the person, though. These are just markers of force, just like the bruising or the scratches. The person doesn't die from that. They die from the effect of having their neck compressed. Usually it's an asphyxial death, that is the brain does not get enough oxygen. In the case of strangulation, it's usually compression of the jugular veins, which are, very, very thin blood vessels that drain the blood from the brain, and very easy to compress them. You can do it to yourself. You can just, I don't recommend it, but you can just put pressure there, 4 or 5 pounds a square inch, and you can compress those veins. And then if blood can't get out of the brain, new blood can't get to it, and your brain becomes starved of oxygen and you arrest. If you put more pressure, you can actually compress the carotid arteries, which supply the blood to the brain. And if you compress them, you're probably also compressing the jugular veins. So now you're not getting any blood in or any blood out, same story. Many people mistakenly think that you're cutting off the air supply to the lungs when a person is strangled. That's generally not true, although it could be true. In a case like that, we might prefer to call it smothering, whereas you would cover somebody's face, somebody's mouth, and somebody's nose and prevent them from inhaling. Usually in strangulation, the larynx and the trachea through which the air passes into the lungs are not compressed enough to prevent air reaching the lungs. So it's usually a vascular phenomenon. And the hyoid bone is fractured in a number of cases. It tends to be fractured in older people who are strangled because that bone is fused and it presses against the spine, and it tends to fracture at the tip here more commonly. But in a younger person, like the decedent was, this is a joint. So this whole horn, it will move. So when it gets pressed against the spine, instead of breaking, it can move and it doesn't fracture. I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe like 20%, 30% of people who are strangled have a hyoid injury. I more commonly see it in the horns of the thyroid cartilage, which is very close anatomically to the hyoid bone.
Doctor, let me ask you this. Based upon your training, education, and experience, with the kind of strangulation that you have described with compression of the jugular veins, do you have a judgment as to how long it takes a person to lose consciousness?
It can occur fairly rapidly. In a perfect situation in which you actually occlude the vessels, people can become unconscious in 10 to 20 seconds.
If the vessels are not perfectly occluded, how long?
Well, if the person is struggling, it could take longer.
Would the person who was being strangled be able to perceive what was going on while they were being strangled prior to loss of consciousness?
If they're conscious to begin with.
Can you compare that experience to any other sort of experience that might be readily relatable?
Well,
Is it just similar to drowning? Drowning?
it may be. I think that there's enough variation in the cases that it's difficult to say. And there may be even more than one mechanism involved in cases of strangulation. It may have more of a neurological base than just a vascular base. It's not possible to know. What you find in cases of strangulation is a person who's dead. And then you want to find out, well, why are they dead? Being dead is a pretty big clue, right? And in a person that doesn't have any other major injuries and no natural disease, why would that person be dead? I have had cases of strangulation where I didn't see any injury whatsoever. And I've seen cases of strangulation in which there is just a huge amount of trauma in the neck, a surprising amount. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know. I would suspect that if a person is not conscious, then they don't fight back. Or if the attacker has a much greater strength than the victim, that they would be able to accomplish it in an easier fashion.
Doctor, let me ask you this question. Based again on your training, education, and experience, how long would pressure need to be applied to the neck of a strangulation victim in order to cause death?
Well, again, it depends on how efficient you are. When I worked here, I was actually provided with a video of some young college students who were horsing around. They were part of a drill team. And one of the male members, a young man, maybe in his 20s, he takes the young woman about the same age and he puts her in what's commonly referred to as a sleeper hold. Now, this is all videotaped. And it's about 12 seconds before she passes out. And then she comes to and doesn't remember anything. So she didn't die, so it would take probably longer than that. But had that person kept that pressure on her neck after she became unconscious, I believe that she would have died. So that's my only personal experience with somebody that's, where I can see the time because of the timestamp on the video. There were experiments done during World War II in which they deliberately occluded with an apparatus the blood supply to the brain. And in those cases, I believe people lost consciousness in as little as 10 seconds. But that's much more efficient than manual strangulation. They were in a device, they couldn't really move, and it was a much more efficient occlusion of the vessels than you would get if you were strangling someone.
Would manual strangulation of a victim who was potentially struggling and resisting take longer? Yes,
if that person could prevent the compression of the vasculature. even intermittently.
And what would a strangulation victim be experiencing prior to losing consciousness? Would they experience terror, fright, air hunger? What would they experience?
Well, I would. I don't know what most people would experience. There is a body of literature. There are people who survive attempted strangulation. So that might be a better question put to one of my clinical colleagues.
Doctor, you mentioned, I'm not sure if you did. What are petechiae, Dr. Hutz?
Well, petechiae are just small hemorrhages, the small blood vessels that burst, and they're often seen in the lining of our eye. Sometimes you'll see them on the face and the eyelids. Sometimes you see them in cases of strangulation. Most cases of strangulation have them. It's one of the things that people look at if they're, see if a body is found in their suspicious circumstances.
You said that the petechiae are caused by bursting of the small blood vessels. What causes those blood vessels to burst?
Well, the idea is that in cases of strangulation, that blood is still flowing through those arteries to the brain, but it can't drain. And so there's an increase in pressure, and the small fragile vessels then burst, and you get these small little reddish dots that we refer to as petechiae or petechial hemorrhages.
So let me try to put this in layman's terms.
I thought I did.
Well, you did. I'm gonna get lawyer dog here, doctor. You talked about the carotid arteries and the jugular vein.
I did.
Yes,
The carotid arteries carry oxygenated blood to the brain, correct?
correct.
And the jugular vein allows the blood to drain from the brain into the rest of the body and back into the circulatory system.
Correct.
You said that it's easier typically to compress the jugular vein than it is to compress the carotid artery.
It is.
So that means that the heart is continuing to pump blood through the carotid arteries into the vein, but there's nowhere for that blood to go. It just builds up in the brain and causes the blood vessels to burst. Is that?
That's the theory. That's the idea behind it. Yes.
Now, turning to this particular case of Theresa Ann Green, in looking at the photographs, were you able to identify any petechiae in Ms. Green's eyes or anywhere else?
I could not see them, but they weren't very good pictures. And sometimes I've had several cases in which investigators who look for petechial hemorrhages in the eyes don't see them. They miss them. You can miss them if they're down deep in the fold of the eye. It takes a little bit to manipulate that. Or you might miss them if a person is decomposing or has been face down and everything just is a muddy kind of reddish brown color. And that may be the case here. I don't see evidence of petechiae in the photos, but they're also not great photos.
Was there any mention of petechiae in any of the reports or other documents that you reviewed?
I do not believe so.
Is the absence of petechiae for whatever reason in this case, either they're not there or they can't be seen, critical to your ultimate opinions and conclusions with respect to this case?
In this case, it isn't. I wouldn't ignore it. I would think about it and I would look hard at it, but not every case of strangulation has petechiae. Most do. I often wonder if more don't, but because people don't see petechiae, maybe they don't pull the trigger and call it a strangulation. But it's pretty clear that sometimes they don't. So when you do an autopsy, when you're trying to determine why someone died, you're thinking about what commonly occurs and what commonly doesn't occur. But you can't rule something out just because it only occurs 5% of the time or 10% of the time. I mean, how do you know? You might have that person there that's the 5% or the 10%. People don't shoot themselves in the back of the head, usually, but until they do. And you don't have to practice forensic pathology very long before you see things like that. So while when we see something like that, like a person that we think is strangled and we don't have petechiae, we might be suspicious and we might look harder. Unfortunately, in this case, I didn't do the autopsy, so I can't do that.
Yeah. Doctor, you mentioned early in your testimony about histological slides. Did you have the occasion or the opportunity to review any slides that were taken in connection with this case?
I did.
And were those slides significant to your opinions and conclusions?
No.
Are slides or histological slides routinely taken in a case such as this one under current standards of practice?
I would probably not. When I worked in Orlando, I would probably not have taken sections in this case. When I worked in Ohio, I took sections in every case, no matter what the cause of death was.
Was that an office policy or just what you did?
It's just something. It's something that we. It's just something that we did, and when our slides came back, we knew just about everything else should have been ready. So, plus, it was a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do when you first start out in forensic pathology. You want to see a lot. You want to see a lot that is normal, and so in forensic pathology, we see a lot of people who die that aren't sick. They're relatively healthy, and so I would routinely submit sections of heart, lung, liver, and brain, sometimes kidney in those people. And it was just a habit. When I came to Orlando, I found that most of the pathologists did not do that. And since they were paying by the slide, they sort of implied that, if you have somebody that's got a gunshot wound to the head, you probably don't need to put a section of the heart or liver or any slides in. And so I ended up not doing that for, I'd say, probably most of my cases.
Doctor, did you have the occasion and also to review the toxicology report from Theresa Ann Green's autopsy?
I did.
And the toxicology report showed that she had beverage alcohol in her system, didn't it?
Yes.
And I believe she had a fairly elevated level.
It was, I believe, a 0.28, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not that had anything to do with her death?
I don't think it was directly related to her death. It might have made her more susceptible. But I don't know, I don't know how good that number is. She's starting to decompose. When people decompose, they can produce in their own body alcohol. You don't have to have consumed alcohol. But you don't always see that. The other problem is that because she was decomposing, and I don't know, I'm just assuming that they couldn't get peripheral blood. We like to have blood from the veins of the lower extremities, right? And the groin is where we usually collect it. Because if you take blood from the aorta, like they did in this case, that can be very close to the stomach and be close to the liver. And so you can get a false level. I think in this case, though, given the short period of time that she's in there, I think that she has to have consumed some alcoholic beverage before she.
Okay. Yeah, Doctor, I'm almost through. In the forensic pathology world, what does cause of death mean?
Well, the cause of death is just why the person isn't alive anymore. Cancer, hemorrhagic stroke, on head impact. That's what you would put as sort of what we call your bottom line on the death certificate. Why is this person no longer alive? They're no longer alive because they have cancer, and there may have been some intervening cause, like maybe they have immunosuppressed in their cancer treatment, and then they got an infection, and then they got septic, but the underlying cause of death is cancer. The same way a person who's shot in the head. They may survive that initial insult, they may go into the hospital, and they may not die for years. But if that wound ended up resulting in their death, no matter how long it took, then that would be the cause of death.
And Doctor, again, in the world of forensic pathology, what does manner of death mean?
The manner of death is a little bit different. So the cause of death.
Real quick, y'all want to hear something crazy? How about I know somebody? How about that just happened in Columbus? Somebody actually was convicted of shooting, and when they shot, they hit somebody and they ended up paralyzed for the rest of their life. Um, this happened maybe 15, 16 years ago. The person ended up going to jail for like 5 years, 7 years, something like that. They went to jail, did their time, got out for the felonious assault and having the popper, right? Fast forward to last year, the person passed away last year, and it was ultimately from that popping that had happened 15, 16 years before. So they went back and found that person who was now a productive citizen of society and charged them with the big M, because essentially what happened to them when they were popped 15, 16 years ago is what ultimately led to them passing away. As like the doctor just said, no matter how long it took. Wow, I just seen that happen last year.
That you could think as a sort of a scientific or medical interpretation, but the manner of death is just a judgment by the pathologist of the circumstances under which the death could occur. So it's easier to just use an example. So you can have a death that's due to natural disease, a death that's due to an accident, some type of trauma, a death that's due to self-inflicted trauma, that's suicide, or a death that's due to trauma inflicted by another person, that's a homicide. And then in the state of Florida, in most states, you also have the opportunity to say, I don't know, either because there's not enough of the tissue remaining, or often you can't decide whether it's an accident or, say, a suicide.
In the case of Theresa Ann Green, doctor, have you reached an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to the cause of Theresa Ann Green's death?
Yes, I believe that the cause of death was strangulation.
Again, in the case of Theresa Ann Green, have you reached an opinion as to the manner of Theresa Ann Green's death to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes, my opinion is that this is a homicide.
No further questions. Sorry, Your Honor, one more. Doctor, just let me kind of find out some things here. Just to make sure we don't leave something uncovered. Let me get you to, if you would, give us a list of the reasons for why you believe that the cause of Theresa Ann Green's death was in fact strangulation.
Well, when I looked at Dr. Gore's work, he said it was strangulation.
Sustained. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll ignore the last comment.
Okay,
Okay,
keep on going past Dr. Gore.
you come up here.
All right, so I look at his autopsy report, and he directs me to certain areas of the neck which he says are injured. He fails. There is some inconsistency in the report. In one part of the report, page 5, he says there's injury to the right side of the neck.
Sustained. You can't tell me what the autopsy.
So you see, the problem here is that I can't really tell you what it is that I do because I didn't do it. But that's the way I arrive at my conclusion. If you just give me the pictures of this person, a woman around 40, she's dead, she's wrapped in a sheet, she's in the trunk of a car. Just that alone, there's a pretty high probability that this person has been strangled, assuming that there's no other injury. I saw photos of her body that were taken at the time of her autopsy, and I didn't see any other injury documented other than the ones that we've talked about. Okay?
Is there any indication of injury or hemorrhage to other organs of the neck beyond the hyoid bone that you're aware of?
It's difficult to see in the photos.
I mean, in internal organs, not on the outside.
In the musculature of the neck, but it's difficult to see. And there's also a photo of the musculature of the superficial right upper chest.
Again, that's on the right-hand side.
Correct.
Is there anything to suggest that Theresa Ann Green was not conscious while she was being strangled?
I don't know one way or the other. I mean,
Does there appear to be any head injury that would have caused her to lose consciousness prior to being strangled?
there's a small area of hemorrhage in her scalp, but I don't see any. I see a photo of that. I don't see any photo of her brain.
No further questions, Ron.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
So I think I kind of want to work backwards with you from some of the stuff that you said near the end, and then maybe go into a little bit more detail. So you talked about the concepts of cause of death and manner of death, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean the job of what we now call the medical examiner, what in Ohio they still call the coroner, has been around for centuries, right?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that the job of the coroner or the medical examiner, at least in part,
You might have to look it up.
is to provide health statistics to those types of agencies, whether they're state or federal, that keep records of the population and how we get sick and how we die and things like that, right?
Yes.
And so the death certificate, right, which you would agree is it's not really part of our legal determination here, right? The death certificate is something which is produced by the medical examiner's or coroner's office for purposes of statistics for the health departments of states and federal governments, right?
Yes.
I'm sure there's lots of other reasons to have it, insurance policies and all kinds of things like that. But there are forms, like here in Florida, we have a form, and you as the medical examiner in a particular case would be required to fill out that form and put in, check certain boxes and fill in certain blanks so that the people who keep the statistics on these things can do so. Correct?
That's correct.
So, for example, if in our society we're having a growth in suicide, they would know this because the medical examiner's office is reporting to the Department of Health or whatever that there appears to be an increase in the number of suicides on teens or something like that, right?
Yes. I'm sure there are other ways I'm sure there are other places where those statistics are gathered, but the death certificate
Sure.
should be one of them and should be a primary one.
So the manner of death where the medical examiner or coroner is called upon to
No,
check off a box, basically, and say,
Might have to.
well, it appears to me that this person died from this or this or this. They died from an accident. They died from homicide. They died from whatever other categories there may be. The medical examiner is the one who's making that determination, and that determination is your best estimate, your best opinion about what it's likely to be that this person died of. Would that be fair?
Yes.
I mean, you're not an employee of the Justice Department or of the state of Florida's judicial branch or the Ninth Circuit State Attorney's Office or anything like that, right?
That's correct.
You're an independent office
Yes.
with multiple responsibilities, including on occasion having to testify in court.
That's correct.
So when you look into the manner of death, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is what it sounded like, you not only use the evidence that you obtain from the body at the medical examiner's office, all the evidence that you could possibly obtain from that body, but you also look at the circumstances surrounding how a body was found.
You have to.
You have
You have to.
in order to make a determination about how that person died.
Correct.
Now, but it's true though, right, that these circumstances, this is not, we talked about, for example, a person being found in a car, right? And what that could possibly be. That's not something that you were taught in medical school, right?
Well, no, I don't think so.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at, it's in other words, is that anybody could look at that circumstance, right? A detective, a juror, a witness could look at that circumstance and draw conclusions from what they observed about that circumstance.
I think people often express that as the manner of death, not being a medical or scientific term. It's more of a sort of bureaucratic classification.
A bureaucratic classification, right. So it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you included the fact that Theresa Green was found in the trunk of a vehicle as a variable in the, I'd say, in the equation that you solved to come up with a solution in this particular case. Would that be correct?
It wasn't the only one, but it's
I know.
part of it, yes.
Sure, no, it
Part
couldn't
of it.
possibly be the only one, right? Because you're a medical examiner, you wouldn't be coming in here just to say, I think if she was found in a car, that means she was murdered, right?
I'd be along those lines, so.
The fact of the matter is that it is pretty common, right? It's probably predominantly common that if a person is found dead in the trunk of a car, it's very likely that they have been murdered by somebody, right?
I would say that's probably true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always true.
Well, that's true. I mean, people can hide a body for
Other reasons.
other reasons.
Right, so, and who knows what the odds are, I certainly don't, I don't know that you do, but it's something, some percentage
All
of
right.
people are found in vehicles that have been secreted away in the back of this vehicle by some other person for reasons that don't necessarily support a conviction of homicide, right?
Possible, yes.
Like, for example, a drug dealer sells drugs to someone and they die on them right away. And then the drug dealer freaks out, takes the body, puts it in the trunk and hides the body, right? And the person doesn't want to be discovered. I mean, and for purposes of my example, I'm talking about a situation, state like Florida used to be, where if you were that person, you couldn't be convicted of murder. Now that's, but in plenty of states, it's still, that still doesn't amount to murder. If you sell someone drugs and they have to die.
Well, technically, it might.
Yeah, I think that's pretty commonly a problem now, is that many of those people are now charged with.
Yeah, they are.
So that just gives a person more of a reason to sort of distance themselves from that dead person.
Absolutely. And you could have lots of reasons to want to do that. Okay, so
He
I
distance himself because he's
sense
this ain't
a
going.
lot of discomfort with you about the fact that, you know, you really didn't get to do the kind of job that you would normally do as a medical examiner in this particular case, right? I mean, you didn't actually have your hands on the body. You didn't get to see the body from all different angles and different lighting. And am I correct?
I would go further than that. I think Dr. Gord did a sloppy job here. I don't think there's any question about that.
Well, I mean, we're
But
not,
that
we're
does-
not here to,
right,
to
right,
judge
but-
Dr. Gore anymore.
But just based on what I could see with the low quality of the photographs, and they have to remember, this is 2002, so we've all gotten used to having really, we could take a much better picture with our phones now than we could with the $7,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 cameras back then. So, but there wasn't the attention. He didn't do it. He didn't do it.
No, like I said, we're not here
So-
to judge him. This is not about Dr.
So, but it
Gore.
makes it more difficult.
Sure. No, I'm just merely pointing out the fact that you are being honest about, the kind of job that you would normally expect to do, right? Before you're asked to render an opinion, and the kind of job that you are required to do because this is all you've got, before you render a medical opinion. And so, for example, right, we're spending a lot of time talking about the hyoid bone. It would have been important if you were there to, for example, handle that bone in your hands and see if it was it articulated, was it separated, was anything actually happening with it while it was still all connected with tissue.
Typically, that is what happens. Yes.
Right. I mean, this picture that's been up behind you now for the last 15 minutes or so, that shows these bones completely taken apart. It's kind of deceptive, isn't it?
Well, it is if you don't know what it is. I mean, it's obvious to me when I first looked at it that's not a fracture. That's a normal hyoid.
Right. And not only that, but a procedure was utilized upon that structure, which I believe you yourself would not approve of, and that is that the entire structure was submitted to some sort of chemical process which defleshed it completely and essentially turned it into a laboratory specimen for instructive purposes. I mean, practically, right?
Yes, because in this case, if there was an injury, and I believe that there was, it would have been the injury around that joint. And the evidence is the hemorrhage in the soft tissue. It's not the bone itself. So that doesn't add anything. If the bone had actually been fractured, I suppose this would have made it easier to see, but you could also easily have just x-rayed it.
Right. Okay, and while we're sort of discussing the concept of scientific analysis and best evidence, you mentioned under direct examination that there was no evidence of petechiae that you could detect from the images that you were provided as your only effective source of analyzing that kind of thing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you have to admit, right, if you use strict scientific methods, that a lack of evidence is functionally exactly the same as no evidence at all, right?
Now, wait a minute.
I suppose it would depend on the context.
Well, look, I mean, if you're reaching a scientific conclusion about something, you always have to maintain open the possibility that, number one, your conclusion is always dependent upon any evidence that you might find in the future, correct? In other words, all scientific concepts and beliefs or theories are contingent on future studies, future information that might change your position, correct?
I'll grant you that.
And the reason I say that is because if you're in a situation where you have a lack of evidence, and I think that you've been up there saying that essentially, just because there isn't any petechiae, am I saying that right? Is that-
Yeah, that's right, petechiae.
Just because there isn't any petechiae doesn't mean that she wasn't strangled, correct?
Correct.
But you have to agree that it also doesn't tend to support the conclusion. that she was strangled.
Green.
Well, if I just, once we agree that they don't have to be there, then it
Yeah,
doesn't.
I mean, it's still a zero, right?
Yes, but I mean, to be fair, I see petechiae more often than people who aren't strangled. Now, it's true, when a person is strangled and they have petechiae, they tend to be more prominent.
Well, I mean, I guess the shortcut is, if there were petechiae visible, you would be testifying about it. You would say, yeah, that normally you see petechiae in strangulation cases, and here it is.
Yes, I would.
So talking about scientific evidence, Mr. Nunley asked you some about the slides and tissue samples, right? So as I, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, you know, you as a medical examiner had the opportunity to take samples, tissue samples from wherever you deem necessary on the body for further examination, correct?
That's correct.
So you now I've actually watched autopsies and seen doctors take tissue, for example, brain tissue, heart tissue, cut it up into small pieces and put it in a tube and send it off. Is that about right?
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of, okay, all right, more or less. And then the tissue, when it goes to a lab, they're going to take that tissue, they're going to preserve it. They're going to, and I may miss a step on this, but they're going to preserve it. They're going to put it in a wax that allows the tissue to be held firmly.
Yes.
And then that wax block will be in some sort of holder. And I know there's a variety of different systems out there. And then that tissue inside the wax block will be taken to a machine that has the power to cut extremely thin slices from that block, right?
Correct.
And then those thin slices are mounted on slides. And then, well, before that, I think somebody dyes them, right?
Correct.
So they use a variety of dyes depending on the color of the tissue, a variety of different dyes in order to make the image pop, so you can see detail inside,
Yes.
right? I imagine a lot of tissues are quite pale and probably translucent, and if you don't dye them, you can't really see very well, right?
That's correct.
And so if you take these tissue blocks and make some slides, keep the blocks, later on when you come back, you can make more slides if you want to.
Yes, you
For
can.
example, if there was something wrong in the dyeing process or
Right.
it dried up or whatever, you could make more, right?
Right.
In this case, you did have the opportunity to view these slides. The slides, whatever slides were present, you were able to view them.
Yes.
And those slides were made from tissue samples that were taken from areas that Dr. Gore, who was the person who was present at the time, from tissues that he believed to be damaged, show bruising or contusion, and so had those tissues removed, and those were the ones that got made into the slides, correct?
So, yes, some of them. Most of them were not from areas that he believed were injured.
Okay. But of the ones that were, you got to view all of them.
I did.
Is that right? And at the microscopic level, an area of our body or any animal body that has a contusion, you would expect to see that red blood cells had leaked out from the capillaries into the spaces in between, for example, muscle tissues, where they're not supposed to be. And that's what we observe as a bruise on our skin.
Yes.
But you didn't see that in the slides, correct?
I don't know. I don't remember. I looked at those, it's been 11 years ago.
Okay. In the time that has elapsed since you saw them, did you come to know or understand that the slides and the tissue blocks have been destroyed?
Yes.
And I'm not blaming you in any way for this, okay? So I don't
Thank
want
you.
this to sound like an accusation, but you are confirming that whatever evidence was present there is no longer available, and so any other medical examiner who comes along to attempt to scientifically recreate your results would not have the benefit of those slides.
That's correct.
So you mentioned that the reported blood alcohol level found in Theresa Green was 0.28, correct?
That's what I remember.
So that's milliliters per deciliter.
Grams per deciliter.
Grams per deciliter of blood.
So yes,
So, I mean, that's a really high number.
it is if you're, if it's a good specimen and you're driving a vehicle, yes.
And you know, you would not be surprised to hear that witnesses have taken the stand in this trial and testified that she was really drunk, right? That wouldn't surprise you at all.
It doesn't.
Sound like
And you know, if it's 0.25 instead of 0.28, it's still a lot, right?
Yes. Yes.
Now, it's true, right, that her alcohol level could actually have been somewhat higher, and that the amount of alcohol in her body could actually have reduced while she was in the trunk of the car just from evaporation through her skin.
I think in that short period of time, probably not too much. I would worry more about it being higher due to that. Fermentation, but I don't think it's not a reliable thing. I mean, sometimes you'll see it in decomposed bodies and sometimes you don't. I mean, there have been reports. Well, I suppose there are cases, I've had rare cases, usually younger, naive people, alcohol naive, people who aren't used to drinking.
Yeah, I mean,
Would be dead from a little bit higher than I don't think 0.2 or 0.3. I don't usually think of it as significant until we get over a 0.3, but each case is different. I'm sure I know I have had a teenager found dead in her room, and she was 0.25, something like that.
so it could have been responsible. I mean, I think, in fact, in the past, you testified that if Theresa Green had been found dead in bed without the injuries that you referred to, you found her dead in bed, and then you found out that was her blood alcohol level, you'd say it's probably from the alcohol.
Well, I think I would want a little bit more,
Well,
and that's the case. If that were the case, I probably would have, looked harder for something else. Not saying that I wouldn't have eventually possibly come to that conclusion, but I wouldn't just have stopped as soon as I got the lab report back and said, oh, well, that's why she's dead. Because it's unusual for a person, especially who's, as you said, known to drink, to be dead from a level like that.
now, you were informed at some point that it's been alleged and testified to in this courtroom that before she was found dead and while she was very intoxicated, Theresa Green fell down a flight of stairs. And I think her reported weight was 192 pounds. Fell down a flight of stairs with another person, and by some accounts, tumbled over each other
Yes,
all the way down the stairs. You could break your neck doing that, right?
you could.
You could certainly end up at the bottom of a staircase with some bruises and some scratches from whatever is happening when you go down this washing machine down to the bottom of a set of stairs, right?
Yes.
And if you happen to hit your head while this is happening, you're intoxicated to that level too. That being struck in the head could be another cause of a person's death.
Yes, there are well-documented cases. I think I've had at least two of people who sustained what looks like relatively minor head trauma. You might not even see anything. You just have a history that they were punched. They're also intoxicated and they die. But these people usually die suddenly. It's a sudden death.
Well, we don't actually know.
Right.
A great moment of death. It could have been quite sudden. So it's common since we're
What your client tell you? Tell us.
continuing this discussion about
You applying all the lot.
and Mr. Nunnally asked you quite a bit about how long does it take to die from being strangled. It's common for people who are being strangled to fight and struggle with their attacker, correct?
Yes.
And so one of the common things that you would look for in the body of someone who you suspect died from strangulation is what we refer to as defensive wounds, correct?
Well, you would look at for evidence of those wounds in any type of.
And what would they typically look like?
In a case of a person who's been strangled, sometimes all you'll see is sort of a disruption. I think particularly of women with, artificial nails, that those have a tendency to come off during the struggle.
Sure, because the first thing a person's going to do is reach up with their hands and try to get the hands off of them or something along those lines, correct?
I would assume. I've never seen it.
When I was reading up on the literature about all this stuff, that was one thing that just kept coming out over and over. Unlike a lot of science, it's not subject to experimentation. And I've never met a medical examiner or anyone who's witnessed someone being strangled to death, thank God. And so you just have to speculate on that. But it seems reasonable to believe that a person who's being strangled is going to claw at the person who's attacking them or claw at their hands or something along those lines, right?
It does happen.
And you might expect to see those artificial nails broken off.
You might.
But you didn't see anything like that on the screen, right? Nothing that you would categorize as defensive wounds.
I did not see anything.
And in the pictures, all her fingernails are intact.
It looks like it, yes.
It's typical for the medical examiner's office, one of the technicians, right? Because most of the heavy work is done by a technician at your office.
Well, most of the cleaning is done by the
Yeah.
technician. But
Well, I've only ever seen them here, and generally.
I have a little bit different procedure. I do my own evisceration, so I remove.
Oh, okay.
I remove all the organs myself.
Oh, all right.
So
But in any.
I don't know
case-
what they did at the time that this autopsy was performed.
Well, it's probably true that in the majority of cases, not all, the fingernails are removed from the decedent.
Yes, in cases that are suspected homicides.
And the reason for that is so that the fingernail clippings can be sent in and tested for possibly the DNA of the person who was attacking you. Correct?
Yes,
And because if you scratch somebody, their fingernail, their cells get underneath your fingernails, and somebody could find it, and it's pretty doggone hard to explain how your skin got under somebody's fingernails, right? Especially if that person ends up dead.
well, it can be, but I mean,
Sure.
it wouldn't be unusual to find it if they share a residence.
Oh, right, sure. So if I heard you right, we'll move on to the highway itself. It sounded like you were not sure, but that you thought that it appeared as though a part of that hyoid bone looked like it might have hemorrhaging as opposed to another part.
Yes.
You weren't completely sure about that.
No, it's just, that's the way it appeared from the photograph.
I mean, if you had it in your hands,
Would have been, yeah.
then you could look at it from all different angles and make a finer detailed judgment.
Correct.
The scratches that you observed on, that you believe you observed on the back of Theresa's neck, those scratches, I mean, you can't definitively say that those scratches were caused by a human being.
No,
Is that fair?
that's
I mean,
correct.
like, I don't know, but I would imagine, like, if you had, like werewolf movies or something, if you had 4 scratches that went long ways across the body that were spaced, about the same distance as fingernails, you could say, well, that sure looks like a hand that went across. But those scratches that we saw on the slide, they seem to be sort of haphazard. Is that a fair?
Yes,
So they really could have been caused by anything that she might have rubbed against that might have abraded that part of her neck.
well, I don't think it was necessarily anything. I mean, that's,
Well, it wasn't
it's a peculiar pattern. It would have to, but it doesn't have to be fingernails.
Just one moment, please. Thanks. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to talk about very briefly was what appears to be in one of the images a fat lip, for lack of a better word, on Miss Green.
Fat lip. Sir, come on with it.
Did the tissue appear to you from looking in the photographs that it had
It was not up to par with how he saw it.
broken to the extent that it would have bled?
Show what they would
It
in
does.
2026. Cool.
And that would be consistent with somebody slapping her in the mouth with a hand?
Yes. Could be.
Okay. I think that's all I have at this moment.
Can you redirect?
Just a moment, Sean. Well, that's just one final question. Are the opinions and conclusions, not two final questions, I'm a lawyer. Are the opinions and conclusions that you've expressed here today that Theresa Ann Green's cause of death was strangulation, that the manner of her death was homicide, held by you to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes,
Are you satisfied with those conclusions that you've testified to today based upon the evidence that you have reviewed and all of the facts and circumstances and information known to you about this case?
I am.
Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions from the jury? We have one.
Judge, I have this thing called,
Come on up. Yep.
Was that it? Are we resting? Come on, Kathy, the way I would be walking around. The way, not Jesus Christ. The way I would be having to stand up, walk around. I need to sit down, stand up desk. I got problems. I can't sit still like that. That is a special type of person. Because the other thing is, I think mine would come with commentary. Because I look at them like, what you just say? I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face with some of the stuff that was said. Can you imagine Miss Weaver trying to keep it together and get all that together with Woody? Going back and forth with Hilton? And not bust out laughing?
We've got a couple of questions for you, Dr. Utz. If the carotid artery is compressed prior to the jugular vein, would that lessen the likelihood of petechiae?
Well, that's a theory, and that's why you tend not to see petechiae in
No.
hanging deaths. We see a lot more hanging deaths than we do strangulations. But the idea there is that you don't see them because the carotid artery is compressed more efficiently by hanging than it would be by manual strangulation.
On what side of the neck does the carotid artery run?
They're on both sides. It's a paired structure, so we're pretty symmetrical beams. So usually whatever you have on the right side, you have on the other opposite side.
Any follow-up on behalf of the state,
So, Your Honor.
on behalf of the defense?
just one follow-up question, Judge. Doc, the term homicide, when you use it in discussing manner of death, doesn't mean anything more that a person died as the result of an action of a human being, correct?
That's correct.
It doesn't,
A different human being.
right, a different human
If
being.
it had
right.
been
Now,
the
as-
same human being, then we would call it
Suicide.
suicide. Yes.
It doesn't mean murder. It just means person died as a result of the action of another person.
That's correct. It is not the same as murder.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, any additional questions on behalf of the jury?
To a lay
The witness be excused.
might be
Thank you, Your Honor.
fine.
You are free to go, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think this would be a good time to take a recess. Do not discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss it with anyone else. Do not do any independent research while you're away from us. Leave your pads and pens on the chairs. They will be there when you return, and we will resume at 3:30.
Jury exiting.
Quick question before I run and go get me a Pepsi. Quick question. Does the handling of the hyoid bone change anything for you? Okay, let's back this up. Did your opinion change or not with the DNA evidence? And if it did the hyoid bone or the handling of the hyoid bone change your DNA opinion? Was anybody flip-flopping around like maybe you didn't see much of a case before the DNA said, ha, gotcha. And then maybe the way that the autopsy was done, maybe like, we don't know what happened to her. Anybody like that? this is one of those strange situations where Mr. Mike don't have to say a damn thing, right? Mr. Hunter don't have to say a thing. Demorris don't have to say a thing. He is innocent until proven guilty again. However, how you end up bleeding, sir? Unless you're gonna say you hurt yourself when y'all fell down the steps and then you went to go clean yourself up in her bathroom and then you kind of dribbled a little bit of blood mixed with hers on her watch in the same spot, or the fingerprints. So we got fingerprints. Like, I guess I expected myself to be a little bit more. I just feel like something's missing, but whatever I feel is missing is for my own human mind. I'm sure it has no legal standing, but I just feel like tell the whole damn story. They did fall down together, right? It's a hell of a coincidence. They fell down together. They fell down literally together. That whole living quarters, like that area is simply to get in and get out. There's nothing else to be done there because it did look small. So so I don't see. I mean, it could happen, and then again, there's still, the chief of the Slap-a-Hole tribe who putting his laying hands on people, which I don't think he needed somebody to slap him first to do it either. But still, it is true. If your nose is bleeding, the first thing you do is grab it. So, and we know that your blood is a whole lot thinner if you've been drinking, and therefore that could have caused her nose to gush off of. Because I was like, what kind of slap did you do for her to? Like, I think Joseph pushed him and went to that apartment. I have a lot of questions for Joseph. The other thing is, I think they should have at least taken Joseph's DNA. At least, because he was at least on the scene where the body was left. Whether he went in the trunk, whether he touched the other car, whether he gave him a dap and when he went to the scene. So I would like to know, I haven't seen anything, but I would like to know, did they at least threaten Joseph with accessory after the fact or tampering with evidence or obstruction, something that make him talk, because he helped dispose of her, whether he meant to or not. But you can't come to my door at 3:00 in the morning and ask me to follow you nowhere. First of all, you better be bringing Jesus and the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost with you coming to this door at 3:00 in the morning. And then gonna ask me to get out my bed. First of all, what I hope I don't offend nobody. Let me tell you something. Once the brawl is off, the day is over. Okay? I'm going nowhere. I'm doing nothing. You gonna come to my door at 3:00 in the morning, wake me up out my sleep and ask me to put it back on? No. And if you're that sick, we can call you the squad. I'm not about to. Mm-mm. No, ma'am. And then you can't trust people. You don't know that man from a can of paint. All you know is he Mike from downstairs. You don't even know his real name. Come on, that's a commandment. And that's right up there with once I turn all the lights off in this kitchen, fold that rag right across that middle and turn that light on the stove, kitchen closed. Closed. Shut down. Don't touch nothing. Kitchen is closed. Yeah, we know the wife lied. And yeah, that could be a reason. That could be a reason to lie, because y'all finna mess up my job for this party of 3 people that y'all done had that I wasn't even at. I'm in the bed. This can't be what I'm about to lose my job over. Let me tell you something. If Tiff Ann come to my door at 3:00 in the morning, I will put it back on, but I'm calling a lawyer. If Tiff Ann come to my door at 3:00 in the morning and ask me to do anything, I'm going to make sure I have a lawyer somewhere on the phone. Okay? I don't care if it's Stara. I don't care if it's Yates. I don't care if it's Kayla. Somebody gonna get up and answer the phone for me, because I don't trust that fool. And whatever she was gonna do is done. Trust me, she done it. It's done, did. Okay, she just coming to ask me a question, and I guarantee you, with Tiff Ann, she's really coming to tell me the story so I can confirm that she was justified in whatever bullshit she done did. But now I know. So I got to have a lawyer on the phone with us. We got to sell them $1 so they can already be on retainer, So there's some privilege in there, because Tiffany gonna cause us need some privilege. A lot of privilege. A whole lot of privilege. She gonna shake that privilege to the white meat. Do you hear me? Tiffany gonna make them have to figure out whether or not attorney-client privilege is really, it might be a little overrated by the time she get finished. Tiffany gonna have a lawyer wishing they could go tell somebody. Tiffany gonna have a lawyer on somebody's black couch. We need to pray. We need to get we need to get Tiffany somewhere. We need to pray right now. Y'all just made me think of that. Her damn Darcy, her damn therapist, and went and got a new job. She needs somebody. We've been on. Don't nobody fuck with her, please. Leave her alone. Don't nobody start no shit with her, please, till we find somebody else, because Darcy didn't got another goddamn job, okay? And I think somebody was fucking with her yesterday. Listen, G Money. Tiffany ain't gonna bring that privilege loose. Do you hear me? Bring it out like a bad dish rag. They sure do. They sure do. Y'all ain't watched Kayla's master class she got on PI. She said you call the police, you call the police, you do something else, and then you call me. Listen. What is this? Cleaning up this stuff. I done switched this desk around. Okay. Lawyers do pick up the phone 24/7. I guarantee you, most folks, if you Google any law office, their office hours probably say 24/7, just because shit happens, Because I know after our accident, they called us to pick a settlement, the payout. So, we'll split up a couple different ways, but one of the payouts, and I told them, "Oh yeah, I'll come pick it up tomorrow." And they were like, "Well, you coming today?" And I'm like, "No, I'm gonna come tomorrow." So I got ready to go the next day, and I went to look them up on Google Maps to see their hours of operation so I could know what time to go, and it said 24 hours. So I had to call them, and it was a number that had been texting me. And I had to text them like, excuse me. Listen, y'all see Dougie Fresh put out that post on TikTok talking about this is all you say with a cop when you over.
Even though the light most favorable to the non-moving party, there's no evidence to suggest that Demorris Hunter killed Theresa Green.
Okay, judgment of acquittal.
And took any
On the mic, please.
killed her. There was no evidence of any premeditation, no evidence of any intent, malice, or negative action on his part. Second part of our motion for judgment of acquittal is as to all of the charges, specifically for all of the same reasons. There's no evidence, even though it was favorable to the state, that Demorris Hunter took any actions to kill Theresa Green, did anything with regard to killing her, and that's the defense's position.
All right, thank you, State.
Judging the evidence in light most favorable to the state, Your Honor, I don't think the defense is challenging that Theresa Green is dead. As far as element two, the defendant was the one who committed the murder. The evidence in light most favorable to the state shows that the defendant was the last person to see the victim alive. They were seen in the victim's apartment after they tumbled down the stairs by Lisa Moore. She saw them both walk into that apartment. There was no sign of forced entry to the apartment, which indicates that somebody who had access to the apartment was probably the one who caused the committed the crime. Lisa Moore heard arguing behind that door after they tumbled down the stairs, walked back up the stairs and went inside the apartment. The defendant would be the one that had access to her car keys. The defendant is the one that arranged to have the car the next morning with her body in the truck transported to Walgreens in Sanford. That was testified to by both Joyce Butler and Joseph Butler. As they were leaving, dropping the car off at Walgreens, the defendant told Mr. Butler, "I messed up." The defendant is the one that fled the state. The evidence suggests he is the one that burned the stolen car, and he tries to run when he is arrested. So I think in light of the evidence in light most favorable to the state, that is sufficient to show that the defendant, that a jury could conclude that the defendant was the one that committed this crime. As regarding the premeditation aspect, element number three, again, judging evidence in light most favorable to the state, the victim has various areas of her head and neck that are indicative of trauma, multiple blows. There are scratches on both sides of her neck, consistent with strangulation, consistently being caused by fingernail marks. We have heard, and we all know common sense, strangulation is not a quick process. It can take seconds up to a longer period of time, depending on the level of consciousness of the victim and the level that the victim is actually struggling or fighting. We have the evidence of the hyoid bone hemorrhage, which is consistent with strangulation. As we said, the hyoid bone is a very protected structure up in the throat above the Adam's apple, the level of the chin, not likely injured by falling down the stairs or being slapped. We also have, though not directly indicative of premeditation, we do have his actions after the murder. If this was not a premeditated murder, we don't have a situation where the defendant comes to and realizes and goes and calls the police for help, goes across the hallway to the butlers and asking for help. Oh my gosh, what did I do? That is indicative of premeditation. I think it might most favorable to the state. There's enough to get to a jury.
I believe it is a jury question at this point, so I'm going to deny the motion for judgment of acquittal. Is the defense prepared to put its witness on?
Yes, Your Honor, we are.
All right, then let's bring the jury back in.
Oh, son.
Jury enter.
Put that video of him laying down there in agony on that casino floor. We know they wrong.
May be seated. State, do you have any additional witnesses?
You do not, Your Honor. At this time, the state rests.
Thank you. Defense, you may call your first witness.
Defense called Dr. Jonathan Arden.
What in the alert?
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
You may be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. Could you state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter, please?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Oh, it's very loud. I'm Dr. Jonathan Arden. Last name is Arden.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon, sir.
Could you tell the jury what you do for a living?
I am a forensic pathologist. My primary employment now is as a consultant in forensic pathology and medicine.
And could you tell the jury a little bit of how you came to be a forensic pathologist and what your work experience has been over the years?
I attended college for 2 years at the Johns Hopkins University and then 2 years at the University of Michigan, where I received my Bachelor of Science degree in 1976. I then attended and graduated from the University of Michigan Medical School, receiving my MD or Doctor of Medicine degree in 1980. Following medical school, I served in 2 training programs. The first was a 3-year residency in anatomic pathology at the New York University Medical Center in New York City. I followed that with a 1-year fellowship in forensic pathology at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for the state of Maryland. My employment history after I finished my education and training really consists of 2 separate halves of my career. First 20 years of my career, I served as a full-time government medical examiner. I worked in 4 different jurisdictions, including 9 years with the city of New York, where I rose through a number of titles and spent most of my time either as the acting or the first deputy chief medical examiner, that being the second in command to that system. I then spent about 5.5 years as the chief medical examiner of Washington, D.C. At the completion of that 20-year block of government service, I then started my private consulting practice, the type of work that brings me here today. I've done that now for close to 22 years, and overlapping with that, I have held several part-time positions. Most importantly, since 2008, I hold a part-time appointment under the title of forensic pathologist with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner for the state of West Virginia.
And Doc, are you licensed in any states in the union to be a forensic pathologist?
Well, the licensing is actually to be a physician.
Be a physician.
But I am currently licensed to practice medicine in 5 states, which are Florida, West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, and I hold a license in New York State that's in an inactive status. In terms of being a forensic pathologist, I am board certified by the American Board of Pathology in both anatomic and forensic pathology, and have been so certified since 1985.
Damn.
And how many autopsies have you performed? If you know.
I don't have an exact count, but I know I've performed a bit over 3,000 forensic autopsies in my career. I know I've also examined at least 500 or more other bodies that were external examinations only without an autopsy, but for the purpose of completing an investigation and issuing a death certificate. And in the course of my career, especially in New York City and Washington, D.C., where I had supervisory roles, I've participated in or supervised many thousands of death investigations.
And you've testified in courts around the United States as an expert witness?
I have.
How many times would you guess?
I've stopped keeping an exact count, but in the 42 years I've been doing this. In trial, deposition, grand jury, administrative hearings, I've been under oath well over 900 times.
And do you have any idea what percentage of those times you've testified on or have been called to testify by an arm of the government, whether it's the state, a commonwealth, or the federal government?
Again, I don't have an exact count, but the first 20 years of my career, almost every court appearance was a trial in criminal matters called by the prosecution as a part of my work as a government medical examiner. There has to be 400 or 500 of those.
And presumably you've also testified on behalf of the defense, or you've been contracted by a defense team to assist them.
I've been contracted hundreds of times by criminal defense teams, and a certain percentage of those also involve testimony.
And have you ever not been qualified as an expert?
No, sir.
Judge, at this time, we would tender Dr. Arden as an expert to give opinions in the field of forensic pathology.
Any voir dire?
No objection.
He will be permitted to render his opinion in that field.
So it appears obvious, but Doc, you were contracted by our team in order to assist us in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what sort of information given about this case in order to prepare to render an opinion?
I was provided materials to review, which consisted largely of the materials from the medical examiner's office on the death and autopsy of Ms. Green. That would be the autopsy report, the toxicology report, the autopsy photographs. There was an investigative narrative also from the medical examiner's office. I was also provided some videos, from the crime scene, and at a later date was made available deposition testimony from Dr. Utz.
Okay, so you've had the opportunity to review and actually today hear everything that Dr. Utz has said in the past under deposition or in court. You've had the opportunity to review all of that.
Yes, sir.
So would it be fair to say that you and he are more or less equal footing in terms of where you start as a medical examiner in order to evaluate this case?
Yes, I think that's fair. We have similar, similar backgrounds in our careers and qualifications. And we were both.
I meant more that the materials that you
Materials.
had at your hands
Right.
in order to begin your investigation.
Yes, and that's where I was going, that we both had the same materials to review. Neither one of us performed the autopsy. And this is a circumstance that happens with supervisors. It happens when somebody needs to be a substitute witness for the medical examiner, because I've offered substitute witness testimony as a medical examiner because the other medical examiner is out of the country, on a few occasions because the other medical examiner had died. And it's the same thing a consultant like me does. You don't do the autopsy yourself. You get the materials, you review them. So he and I are, you're right, on equal footing of having had the same materials under the same circumstances.
Well, it would be fair to point out with one exception,
Yes,
and that is that you were never had access to any slides or tissue blocks, correct?
that's correct. That's the one area that Dr. Utz had that I did not.
The Dr. Utz testified that as part of his work in Ohio now, they routinely do tissue samples from the bodies that come before them, but that here in Orange County, it wasn't quite as common. I'm not asking you what you know about Orange County's practices, but in the places that you've practiced, was it common for your offices to routinely take tissue samples of a variety of locations of any body that came before you for examination?
Just to clarify, I think he testified that it was when he was in Ohio in Hamilton County not his current position
Okay, okay.
that they routinely did. And my impression from his testimony is that part of it was the office practice in Hamilton County in those days, and part of it was he was brand new. And when you are new, you tend to take microscopic slides of much more, because even if you're fully qualified and even board certified, when you're the new guy, you're still learning more than the experienced guys. So I think my practice was very similar. When I was young in my career, I took many more slides. It has been my practice for many years that I'm much more judicious with making slides. You don't need routine slides of organs in every forensic autopsy. So, it takes time, it takes money, public resources. It delays finishing cases. So no, I don't do them routinely in every case. I do them selectively when they're clearly necessary or required.
Well, in this case, there were slides done, and according to Dr. Utz, the slides did not factor into his rendition of his opinion, because the slides did not, in fact, show any hemorrhaging at the cellular level. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, since when you and I were getting ready for today, and we discussed, and I was learning from you, we discussed what those slides look like. I asked you if it would be possible for you to obtain images of your typical slide that would in fact show you subcutaneous hemorrhaging, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, I asked Dr. Utz to describe them or to correct me if my description was wrong. He seemed to agree with it. You heard that as well, correct?
I did.
And you provided me with some images that you obtained that show your typical type of subcutaneous hemorrhaging,
Particularly muscular hemorrhage.
muscular hemorrhaging. And can I show those now? So just to be clear, this image that we're looking at, that is not a tissue sample from this case, correct?
Correct.
Where did you obtain it?
I found these on the internet. There are various
Okay.
sources of pathology material and slides that are examples that you can download for teaching purposes, for instance.
Okay, and kind of what you're doing right now.
Exactly.
So the image, if you could describe it and point out some of the features to the jury, so what it's supposed to be.
Mr. Marrero, do you want me to try to make it the end?
That'd be great.
Is that plugged in at the podium?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Then we're gonna try this.
Fingers crossed. It's not plugged in. The AI will become useful.
Well, okay, so I am going to.
Excellent. Hey, there we go.
It's amazing.
Thanks, Judge. I appreciate it. I would not have been able to get it done. So Doc, what are we looking at?
You're looking here at what's called a photomicrograph. That's a photograph taken through the microscope. And this is a roughly medium magnification of a slide of skeletal muscle, the kind of muscle like your biceps or your glutes or whatever. And the larger kind of polygonal pink structures are actually the muscle fibers. They've been cut in cross section. They're long, thin structures in real life, but if you cut them in cross section, like cutting across a bread loaf, you get those kinds of perimeters, if you will. Profiles is the word I'm looking for. So all of the pink structures that are polygons and grouped together are the muscle fibers. And you can see in between them and adjacent to them, there are many areas with what look like little red dots or red blobs. And the red blobs indeed are red blood cells. And so what you are seeing there is hemorrhage. And hemorrhage is the medical term that simply means bleeding, nothing more complicated than that. So if you have damage to the tissue, such as if you have a bruise, you break little blood vessels, blood escapes from the blood vessels into the tissue, and you can then see that with the naked eye as a bruise. And in the microscope, what you have in front of you is a small area of muscle tissue with red blood cells, meaning the contents of the blood, escaped and infiltrating around those muscle cells. And so that is what hemorrhage in the muscle looks like under the microscope.
And if I were looking at that tissue in a living human being, where that process was happening while they were alive, I would likely see a bruise, an image of a bruise on the person's tissue or their skin. I mean, like when I get a bruise from banging
Right.
into something,
Right.
that's what's going on at the microscopic level under my skin.
Exactly. The typical bruises that you have or you see are actually in the fatty tissue that we all have right underneath the skin. They're not necessarily in the muscle, which is usually the next deeper thing. But you can get bruising in the muscle. Anytime you have trauma, usually what we're talking about here is blunt impact trauma that injures the tissue, disrupts some of those blood vessels. You will, with the naked eye, you can see the difference, that tissue looks hemorrhagic, it's redder. And sometimes in an autopsy setting, in fact, the jury saw this with Dr. Utz, some of the tissues look redder than other areas. And in this instance, we have the confounding factor of decomposition about whether that was hemorrhage or not. But just for the generality, the redder tissue usually is hemorrhage, and the normal looking tissue is not. And you can see that in the muscle, in the specimen, in the autopsy. You can see it, you were pointing on your hand, on your own body, at the skin surface, the same way.
Okay. You sent me a couple other pictures. And, now these colors, these brilliant pink colors that come up here, that's a result of the tissue being dyed for contrast. Is that right?
Right. The standard process, which you outlined with Dr. Utz, so I'm not going to belabor it, but the standard process to make microscopic slides of tissue requires the last thing that you do to the tissue once it's been cut and put onto that glass slide is you stain it. You've been using the word dye. We usually use the word stain. And
That's the right word.
there's a standard type of staining that is used almost universally for pathology slides. That's what you're looking at in these photos. And the pink and the red are certain kinds of tissues that pick that up. And the alternative, the other stain, is going to be blue to purple. And so in this one, you can see the muscle fibers are now looking longitudinal. You're cutting them along their length. You can see that the muscle fibers have some mottly purple oblong things in them. Those are the nuclei of the muscle fibers, and that just demonstrates nuclei of cells typically stained with the blue and purple stain, as they are here, and the body of the cell most of the time stains with the pink stain. That's what you have here. And then you can see running horizontally and diagonally across the photo, the muscle fibers are interrupted and separated by collections of those little red dots. And mixed in with the dots, there are a few little purple guys. Those are white blood cells. But most of your blood is composed of red blood cells. And that's why you see those long areas with the red blood cells. That's hemorrhage insinuating itself in between the muscle cells.
Last one. Now, this one looks a little bit closer up. The last one was correct?
Yes. When you look in the microscope, you have multiple lenses that you can interchange, so you get different magnifications. We sometimes say different powers. This indeed, as Mr. Marrero said, is a higher magnification. So you're looking at it bigger and looks like it's closer up. And again, I don't want to belabor this. This is very similar to the first one. Muscle fibers cut crossways, and in between them, jammed in there, are the red blood cells. So it's the same phenomenon. And just the only difference here is that some of those white circles and ovals, those are actually fat cells, which is a normal component of that tissue.
So, Doc, you got to listen to Dr. Utz discuss his opinions and his observations. You've told the jury that you had access to all of the same information without the slides. Did you agree with any of the opinions that he rendered from the witness stand today?
Actually, I agree with much of what Dr. Utz testified to, although respectfully, I disagree with several things that he offered, particularly the opinions concerning cause of death, and I have a slightly different opinion on manner of death.
Okay, well, let's talk about what you agree with first. Do you have that in your head?
Frankly, it's a little harder to summarize because much of what he said, in my opinion, was quite reasonable in terms of his interpretations of what happened to her, what he saw in the photographs and gleaned from the report. So I agree with him about things like the degree of decomposition. I agree with him. There was an abrasion on the back of the neck, and I think we both agree that that was a real, albeit a superficial injury. I think in answer to questions, you offered many opinions. Is this consistent? Is that, things about how strangulation can occur, timing that you might be able to give estimates of, and some timing that he couldn't give estimates to. I think I agreed with a great deal of that.
So there were aspects of the evidence offered by the body, and there were aspects of the evidence that were had to do with the circumstances in which the body was located.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about the evidence that you reviewed in regards to the body. And he made specific reference to hemorrhaging at a variety of levels, at the external level and inside at the hyoid bone. What would you have to say about what you observed externally in the images? What do those images communicate to you?
First and foremost, the biggest thing that the images communicate to me is that the areas of greatest interest anatomically in her body had very significant degree of decompositional change. That's the postmortem breakdown parts of the body. And I believe that most of the external findings that were present and were described in prior testimony are the result of decomposition and not representing injuries that occurred before death. And I can separate the things out for you very simply, and I'll try to be brief. I already mentioned the abrasion on the back of the neck. I completely agree. That's a real injury, meaning it happened before she died. You'll notice its location, though, is something I'm going to come back to in terms of whether it is or is not significant regarding strangulation. I am frankly much less convinced that the scratch marks were actual scratch marks. To me, I'm concerned that they may be entirely the product of decomposition. I am much more concerned about the facial area and the neck and upper right chest, though, because you could see in the photographs that there's a great deal of what's called bloating of the face. The face is actually an area that commonly undergoes more advanced decomposition earlier than other parts of the body. That's why her face and upper neck looked worse, if you will, than the other parts of the body you saw in those photographs.
So nothing happened to
And
If I can just ask you briefly, does the fact that she was laying face down in the car impact that?
yes, actually, because whichever side is down is where fluid tends to collect. Blood collects there. Blood is a source of fuel, if you will, for the bacteria and fungi and other kinds of microorganisms that create most of the decomposition. And so where there's more blood there, it's also a pressure phenomenon. Decomposition starts to break down the tissue and it liquefies things. It also produces gas. So if the tissue is having some degree of being converted into liquid, the liquid is settling down relative to gravity. And if the face is down, then more of it settles into the face. And that's part of the reason you get that bloating. And I want to make very clear the word bloating refers to a post-mortem phenomenon. It's decomposition. The alternative word that sometimes you will hear, and I don't want to hang this on Dr. Utz, because frankly, I'm not sure he said this, but I have heard other pathologists say this. They'll see that bloated appearance from decomposition and use the word swelling. This is not swelling. Swelling is a vital process. Swelling is response to an injury that happens in a living person. The bloating from decomposition is all after death. And in my opinion,
But then what the hell happened?
the area of the right eye that was highlighted, the area of the lips and the face, the area of the right side of the neck, and it'll transition us into the internal examination, the upper right chest. All of that had the appearance of postmortem decomposition. So I do not believe that any of those findings represent injuries that happened before she died.
What about interior?
Now, internally, there's two things. I think to follow on what I just said to you, there's shown in the autopsy photographs the tissues under the skin, mostly the muscles, right side of the front of the neck, and extending continuously in a broad area onto the right side of the front of the chest are redder and wetter, and that is decomposition. The concern was raised about whether that is hemorrhage. Well, number one, to me, it doesn't look like hemorrhage. It's in a dependent area downward relative to gravity that would accentuate decomposition. It's also a very broad zone. This is not an area where you would get from the under the jawbone, across the front side of the neck, down onto the chest. That's not the pattern you would get from probably any injury. And specifically, that is not the pattern you would get with strangulation. Strangulation, and I'm talking about manual strangulation, meaning using the hands and fingers, because we have no evidence that a ligature was used. In other words, like a rope around the neck. And so manual strangulation, if it causes injuries, causes very small localized areas of bruising and sometimes scraping on the front of the throat area. And internally, you get localized small hemorrhages in the muscles on the front of the throat. and you may or may not get, as you've heard about today, fracture of the hyoid bone, or Dr. Utz also mentioned another structure that's right next to the, going right up toward the hyoid bone. They're parts of what's called the thyroid cartilage that also are long and thin, can be broken with strangulation. But you don't get a big broad area of hemorrhage across the front or right front of the neck. And the hemorrhages from strangulation don't go down onto the chest. So first major disagreement I have is that the findings in the face and the neck to me are decompositional and they do not represent bruising or injury from strangulation or any other kind of trauma.
Let me ask you, Doc, if there had been slides taken of what Dr. Utz described as trauma, bruising, and those slides came up looking like the slides that we were showing the jury earlier, that would be good evidence of hemorrhaging underneath the skin. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
And now it is possible, of course, that you could have some bruising and it might not show up on a microscopic level. Is that true or is that not true?
Well, that would really be a sampling issue. Remember, the piece of tissue you take for microscopic examination is small. It's like an inch by an inch kind of thing. And then you take a slice through it that's thinner than a piece of paper. So you're only taking a very small amount of tissue that you can see under the microscope. Now, if you have a bruise you see with your naked eye and you say, I want to look at it under the microscope, and you take a sample of it from the part that you can see, the chances are you are going to see it under the microscope. Excuse me. I just got over a thing, a bronchitis thing. My apologies. Now, if you take a sample that misses it, you won't see it.
So you try to take a few, try to get the odds in your favor if you possibly can.
You do.
But as I pointed out with Dr. Utz, if there isn't any evidence to support a hypothesis, that's the same as a zero for all intents and purposes. It's the same as no evidence at all of that, right?
Right. If there's no evidence, there's no evidence. Sorry. Thank you. Oh, you're too kind.
Because I'm gonna plug in the HDMI on here, try to get this imager. Challenge you one more time.
He talking too much, Celia. He got a lot going on. I give him that. Jesus Christ. Yes, sir.
That's all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's not seeing the podium. What if you plug it in at your table? Because it's seeing it turning.
I plug it in and-
Right.
Okay, do you mind? Will it-
And whether you would be left or right, from my perspective, I'm going to assume you're right.
Actually, I think we're right, Your Honor. According to the-
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Judge. All right, Doc, so you saw this image up when Dr. Utz was testifying, and he pointed out to the an area just to the right of center. If we put a line right through the middle of that U, that was an area of concern of his. What's your opinion about that?
Well, first of all, Dr. Utz also mentioned where the pointer is.
Yes.
And I just want to point out that based on this photo and the other photos of the defleshed hyoid bone, there is nothing at the location of that point. So we can disregard that. As you said, just to our right of center, it's just to the right, our right of where the cursor is. There's a slightly redder area of soft tissue. I agree that this raises a concern that there may be hemorrhage there. I'm not convinced conclusively that it's hemorrhage, but it's a reasonable concern. However, my bigger concern here is that when you look at this, there's no indication of any discontinuity or separation or abnormal angulation of the hyoid bone at the area of the possible hemorrhage. So this photograph, and for that matter, any of the photographs of the hyoid bone prior to being defleshed do not demonstrate a dislocation. And there's no way, in my opinion, you can diagnose a dislocation from these photographs because it doesn't show it. And the only thing that you could do if you wanted to diagnose a dislocation of that hyoid bone is you would have to hold it in your hands and manipulate it and wiggle it and say, I can demonstrate that this side is looser than that side. It's abnormal. That's a dislocation. But you can't do that from the photo, and the photo doesn't show anything to suggest that. So to me, we have no indication of injury on the front of the neck or throat that indicates strangulation. We have nothing in this hyoid bone that indicates that the hyoid bone itself is damaged, even if only dislocated, not fractured. You could get a little hemorrhage around the hyoid bone from a squeeze, from an impact. This could well be decomposition. So this is not evidence, in my opinion, of damage to the hyoid bone. I think the last thing that I want to include in this is that I made reference earlier to the injuries on the back of the neck and the back sides of the neck. The one in the back of the neck is clearly an injury. It's not in the location.
So basically he's saying that the things that happened or the condition of Theresa Ann Green when she was found, some of the things that happened to her or the condition that she was in was more so, in his opinion, nothing but decomposition in the natural process of post-mortem happenings or things that begin to transpire in the body once it's gone. And it's all decomposition, not near, none of it is strangulation. So he's basically saying how they were saying she had contusions and that there was swelling around her face and things of that. No, he's a defense witness. He's saying it's not possible to swell when you're dead. Swelling is a reaction to injury on someone who is alive. But when we've heard about how the blood pools and things of that nature, so they're saying that Theresa Ann was in that trunk face down. So he's saying if it's face down from her laying there, if face down is the gravity, the pressure, everything's pulling towards her face, is going to cause it to what he says is bloat, which is the bloating is post-mortem. So he's saying that the things that were happening to her body, the scratches on her neck, aside from the ones that were on the back of her neck, but he's even saying the location of those don't even come anywhere close to strangulation. Some of the scratches on her, some of the pushes on her, basically everything is decomposition that's due to her body breaking down in the condition that it was in the area that it was in, and in the position that it was in. You can't say this is strangulation. You can't say anything was wrong with that hyoid bone because you ain't touch it, you ain't feel it, you ain't figure it out. And from the picture, she don't have the injuries. The hyoid bone is just fine. It's intact. So basically, with location, position, thank you, Hannah, time, things of that nature, this is decomposition and they got it wrong. So it doesn't help, but that's why, as you can see, the defense attorney was so giddy on cross when he was talking to the medical examiner, because he was getting the medical examiner to say it was done sloppily. And if you say it was done sloppy, then you can say he missed some things. Oh. So that's what's happening right now. He says he agrees with everything except for the cause and manner of death.
Where you get injuries from strangulation. You get injuries from strangulation from grabbing the front and sides of the throat, not the back. The areas that were more on the sides of the back of the neck, Dr. Hutz interpreted to be scratches. First of all, as he did say, you could get those scratches from many different causes. He couldn't tell you that they were only from fingernails. He couldn't tell you that they only happened from strangulation. Even if I accept, for argument's sake, his opinion that those are scratches, and I'm doubtful about that, but let's accept that he's right. They're not in the right place for strangulation injuries. So none of those injuries back there supports a diagnosis of strangulation. So now we've reached a point where we have no injuries on the front. We have no injuries internally. We have no injuries on this body whatsoever that indicate strangulation.
Now, let's assume for argument's sake that that is hemorrhage and that someone suffered that, as you mentioned, by some like blunt trauma or some other process. Would if I was walking around with an injury that looked like that, would that kill me?
Oh, no.
No. So I would imagine it would be somewhat uncomfortable.
You'd probably have some pain.
But you can't die from that, is what you're saying.
No, you can't die from that. And Dr. Utz made a good point. In cases of strangulation, let's hypothetically assume we have a case of strangulation that we all agree is fatal strangulation. The actual injuries that you see, the localized hemorrhages, even the fracture of the hyoid bone, if you have it, those injuries don't kill you. They are representative of the application of force that is capable of causing strangulation, which you then also interpret in the totality of the evidence, the context of everything else, including having reasonably excluded other causes of death. So if you had that tiny little bit of hemorrhage around the hyoid bone and nothing else, and you had a gunshot wound to the head, that thing on the hyoid bone now becomes completely unimportant and irrelevant. If you have that in conjunction with localized hemorrhages in the soft tissue in the skin, in the front of the throat, if you have petechial hemorrhages in the eyes or the eyelids or the face, if you have damage inside the voice box itself, which you sometimes also see in a strangulation, even if there's no fracture.
So this is going to come down to award the experts. Which medical examiner do you believe?
The hyoid bone. If you piece all of that together and have reasonably excluded any other thing, then you can call it strangulation. But we don't have those elements here.
Did you come away with any opinion regarding the level of alcohol in Miss Green's blood and whether or not it might have contributed to her demise?
I did.
And what was that?
Well, first of all, her postmortem blood alcohol was a 0.28 or a 288. It's quite significantly elevated. It's a little lower than the range that's typically considered fatal by itself. And to be fair, we don't see many people who die literally from alcohol intoxication. But you can see people who die from it. And you more often see 0.3, 0.4 range. This is almost a 0.3 though. I think the two factors you have to try to assess here for this blood alcohol in this person.
Do with how?
One is it's significantly elevated. It's very likely that she was drinking and was intoxicated before death.
Yeah.
And the other is decomposition does, not always, but does commonly produce alcohol in the body. And the bacteria that are in the tissue and the blood can ferment the sugars and create alcohol. So it's pretty unusual to get a 0.20 or 0.28 from decomposition alone. Some of the literature says up to about a 0.08 is the range. I've seen higher than that I believed was postmortem. So there's no firm cutoff. So some component, some part of the 0.28 probably is postmortem. But in my opinion, it's likely that much of it was the result of drinking. So she was likely intoxicated. I can't say, I never say anything with 100% certainty because there is no such thing. So I can't give you 100% certainty that she didn't die from that alcohol concentration. It's more likely that she was intoxicated by it. Therefore, it probably, you asked me about how it relates to her death. It probably didn't kill her per se. It may have been circumstantially involved in whatever events happened to her that resulted in her death, but not likely to be the cause of her death.
Were you able to come up with an opinion about what the cause of death would be?
I do have an opinion.
What is that?
It is my opinion
No one has considered
that we do not have
of the stare,
sufficient evidence
especially if it was concrete.
to indicate a specific cause of death of Ms. Green.
It was work sloppy
Um,
and done.
In my opinion, based on whatever evidence we have that's available today, under these circumstances, that her cause of death should be labeled undetermined. She has no anatomical evidence that's conclusive of a cause of death. She has toxicologic evidence that is kind of wishy-washy. The alcohol isn't really her cause of death, although it's theoretically possible. I do not believe there's evidence of strangulation here, even though I agree with Dr. Utz. Under the circumstances, and I know your question was about the body, but strangulation is a very real concern here. But when you're trying to reach an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, there's a difference between a concern and a possibility on the one hand versus reasonable medical certainty on the other.
So a reasonable medical certainty requires substantially more in your mind before you reach that point. Is that fair?
Absolutely. We reach opinions and express opinions, whether it's in court or signing a death certificate, same thing. You have to have reasonable certainty. You have to reach a point where you can say, my opinion is based on solid evidence and it is more probable than any other competing cause. Doesn't mean that every other competing cause has been 100% eliminated, but you have to reach a point where the probability lies with your.
Okay, it's a wash for me. It's a wash for me. I don't want to hear no more. And I'm gonna tell y'all why. Y'all remember Ellen Greenberg? Remember we watched Death Department 603 and all the mess that came out with Goldberg and all that mess. And they kept trying to say that hers was a SUI and that she had managed to stab herself multiple times in the chest, neck, back, and throat. At this point, Remember what Ellen's parents was fighting for? To at least just say it's undetermined. Don't make it SUI because SUI does not get an investigation. But if it's undetermined, it will still be investigated. So even if your change is for the cause or manner of death is just to undetermined, it still would have been investigated and we still would have been at his house. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, y'all.
Conclusion, not the possibility.
All this mess.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, I may have one more question.
You done. Don't get up here questioning him a whole bunch and all this cross-examination because it sounds crazy.
So,
It seemed like we was wrong information.
if it's appropriate to ask you whether or not your uncertainty or your opinion that it is undetermined, is that an opinion that you reach to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes, it is. And in fact, that's consistent with what Dr. Otts testified to. I agree with his assessment of the concept of undetermined. You are allowed as a medical examiner to determine, maybe I should use a different word. You are allowed to certify the cause of death or the manner of death or both as undetermined. And he laid it out correctly. Either you have a circumstance where you don't have enough evidence to reach a single conclusion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, or you may have evidence that says it could be more than one of the choices, and the two choices are too evenly balanced. One choice doesn't rise to high probability, so the others fall away. So undetermined is a valid conclusion that reaches medical certainty because you're saying there's no evidence or the evidence is conflicting and there's no better choice.
Thank you, Doctor.
Cross-examination.
Somebody got up here and played with us.
No, Doctor.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Other than my throat freezing up, so I apologize for that.
Well, the pollen's pretty bad down here too. That may not be helping us. Doctor, let me ask you this. Theresa Ann Green wasn't shot, was she?
Correct.
She wasn't stabbed.
You are correct.
She did not suffer massive blunt force trauma to her head.
I agree.
She was healthy, as far as we know. No viable disease processes that we're aware of. Or
That's true.
she had been drinking. We don't know how, we can argue about how intoxicated she was, but you know, I'll give you that she had been drinking, but not enough to cause her death, right?
Correct.
She wasn't involved in a car crash.
That's right.
She wasn't, obviously wasn't decapitated.
That's true.
She did not have massive blunt force trauma to her chest or thoracic cavity that would have caused death, did she?
Correct. She did not.
So, okay. Now, she has no, in your opinion, no visible markers or indicia, if you will, that caused her death. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So what's her manner of death? Still homicide?
I believe that there are two reasonable choices for manner of death.
Manner of death, homicide, doctor? Yes or no?
I can't give you a yes or no answer.
Okay.
It's more complicated than that.
Now, doctor, you are a consultant and have been for the last 22 years, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that means that you get paid by whoever hires you to work on a case, right?
I get paid for my work.
And what is your hourly rate for that work, doctor?
In this case, I'm at $450 an hour.
And I'm assuming when you said that you are a consultant, you consult both in civil and criminal cases, do you not?
I do.
What percentage of your annual income, doctor, comes from consulting in criminal cases?
I honestly don't know. I can tell you that my consulting work is split about 50-50 between criminal and civil. I don't track statistics of whether end up getting paid more per case in criminal versus civil. There's no way for me to give you the percentage of income, but the percentage of work I do is about half and half criminal and civil.
Okay. So would it be fair, it would be fair to say, would it not, that your income from work in criminal cases is significant?
Sorry, significant?
Your income from work in criminal cases is significant.
Yes, sir.
Now, let's go back and talk about the slides that Dr. Utz talked about that you said you did not have the opportunity to review. And I'll give you that you did not get the chance to look at them. But does that make any difference to your opinion, not having seen the slides?
Actually, it does.
It does. Okay, tell me about that, doctor.
Well, the autopsy report indicated at least one area of tissue from the right front chest area that I described where there were slides taken. And I don't know if I'm permitted to discuss what was in the autopsy report, but.
You're not.
Okay, so I'll leave it at, the report indicates that there was at least one slide taken of an area that I opined based on the photographs was postmortem decomposition. And certainly the presence or absence of hemorrhage in that slide would be relevant to that opinion that I offered.
But your opinion as to the cause of Miss Theresa Ann Green's death remains undetermined even without the slides, doesn't it, doctor?
Correct.
And you talked about the injury on the back of Ms. Green's neck, and are you referring to this fairly prominent one right at the base of her hairline in the middle of her neck in the back?
Yes, it was just to the right of the midline. That's the one.
Okay. And that injury could be consistent with being forcibly slammed into the wall to the extent that the drywall was caved in.
When you pose the question as could be, the best answer is there's a possibility. It's not a location that would likely first hit if you slam someone into the wall. You've got the more protuberant part of the back of the head. You've got the base of the neck and the shoulders. Probably those are going to hit the wall first. Is there a possibility? Sure.
Well, if the shoulders hit the wall first and cave it in, leaving a depression in the wall, then that would expose the back of the neck to contact with the wall itself, wouldn't it, doctor?
Right, and it would likely cause injury to the shoulder as well that we don't have.
It would depend on what the person was wearing, would it not?
Maybe.
Potentially?
That's a maybe. If you hit somebody in the drywall hard enough to cave it in, even with some clothing on, you're likely to get injury underneath it.
Have you got any literature to prove that, doctor, or support that?
No, this is based on 42 years of assessing injuries in humans.
And how many times have you seen people who caved in drywall, doctor?
Couldn't tell you how many times, at least a handful, maybe more,
Because every autopsy is different, isn't it, doctor?
to some degree.
Because we're talking about human beings, correct?
Right, and they are in many ways similar and each one individual as well.
And you believe that what Dr. Utz said or identified as scratch marks on Ms. Green's neck are in fact just a product of decomposition?
I believe they are more likely decomposition.
The linear marks on Ms. Green's neck are the product of decomposition.
Okay.
That's my impression of the photographs.
And your opinion is that none of the injuries to the right front of Ms. Green's neck and chest are, rather, none of the artifacts, or is that the right word?
That's a very good word for that
Okay.
sentence.
None of the
yes.
artifacts shown on the right side of Ms. Green's face, neck, and upper torso are injuries, in your opinion.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. course, you can have a strangulation death,
Not even, it could have been
not have
Right.
any
back in the car.
evidence of injury that is discernible to the naked eye, can't you?
Theoretically possible, but very unusual.
Not impossible.
Not impossible, that's true.
And
Verbal Olympics,
absence of evidence,
Sound like
doctor,
dad
does not necessarily mean
what I can do.
evidence of absence, does it?
That's correct. But absence of evidence leaves you nothing on which to reach a conclusion.
Now, we had a picture of the hyoid bone up for a significant amount of time during your testimony. And your opinion is that nothing shown in the photograph of the hyoid bone and then the ones that were shown during Dr. Utt's testimony show evidence of hemorrhage.
I said that there was a reddened area that is possibly hemorrhage and is also potentially just postmortem.
So it might be hemorrhage or it might not be.
That's right. It could be hemorrhage. It's not convincing to me to the point of conclusive that it is hemorrhage, but it could be, yes.
Okay, and it's possible, isn't it, doctor, for the hyoid, for there to be hemorrhage around the hyoid bone, but the hyoid bone itself not be broken, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And now Ms. Green was relatively young when she was killed, wasn't she?
She was relatively young when she died, yes.
The hyoid bone doesn't typically become a solid structure until significantly later in life, correct?
Right, it's highly variable. I've always said it's somewhere along the line of whatever we call middle age. Could be,
Who knows what that is anymore, right?
that's a good point.
What is it, doctor? Do you know? And
Well-
I want to know too, what is middle age?
I think whatever middle age is a number that's increasing as my age does.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it?
I hope so.
Yeah, we can agree on that, doctor.
We could definitely agree on that. But, going back to your question, somewhere roughly in your 40s, 50s is when many people start fusing at least one side of the hyoid bone, and many of them both sides.
Of course, if a strangulation victim is struggling, that would affect the pattern of injuries or even the presence of injuries visible, would it not?
Struggling is likely to have some effect on the pattern of injuries and is more likely to affect the presence of injuries by having more or more obvious injuries.
Dr. Ark, you gave us a list of things that the way I jotted it down was that you gave us a list of things or factors or observations perhaps that you would have to have before you would call a death a strangulation death. Do you recall that?
I think I did list a number of factors that typically are found or would be supportive of such a conclusion, yes.
But just because those factors, in your opinion, are not present, does not rule out strangulation as a cause of death, does it?
Well, I hate to be the nitpicker that I am, but it depends upon what you mean by rule out, which is kind of one of my pet peeves. If you're using the term rule out to mean exclude with 100% certainty, then that's not a concept that exists or that I testify to. If you're asking me, does the absence of any of those findings eliminate a possibility of strangulation, then no, it's true.
Okay.
It does not.
Yeah, we agree that Ms. Green had a rather elevated blood alcohol level as shown by the toxicology. I believe that was a 0.28 blood alcohol, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you testified, and Dr. Utz also testified, that during the process of decomposition, alcohol can be produced.
Yes, sir.
A blood sample was not taken from Ms. Green's body until sometime after she had been killed, correct?
Sometime after she was discovered, yes.
I mean, she wasn't found for a while, so they couldn't get it right away.
Correct.
I was about to say, how long did it take to
On
find?
the car in May in Florida. And there was some, at least, decomposition visible on the body.
It was like
Yes, sir.
it's 3 days.
Indicate that the fermentation process you spoke of was ongoing.
It certainly could have been. It doesn't happen all the time in decomposition, but yes, it certainly raises that as a distinct possibility.
And actually, I think you just kind of foreshadowed my next question, Doctor. We don't know, and we can't figure out, and there's no way to know what effect if that decomposition might have on the blood alcohol level. Is that fair to say?
There's no way to know precisely what effect it had in terms of, did it produce alcohol? And if so, how much of the alcohol was produced by postmortem decomposition? That's true.
We just can't tell.
With any degree of precision? Absolutely not. You're right.
Science doesn't let us do that yet, does it?
Correct.
Doctor, let me ask you this. There were other areas on Ms. Green's body that we didn't talk about. In addition to the neck and the upper chest, are those injuries also caused by decomposition?
I think you have to tell me specifically what you're referencing.
Were the other injuries that were caused by decomposition? Or do you know?
I'm not sure what injuries you're referring to, so I can't answer your question.
Did you focus solely on the injuries to her head and neck?
I didn't focus solely on them, but your question isn't telling me what you're asking about.
You're the expert, doctor. There are other injuries on her body, aren't there?
I believe there were some abrasions on one side of her torso. I'm not remembering specifically what else. The abrasions on the side of her torso, I think it was the right side of her torso, to me are real injuries, not decomposition.
Okay.
Tag team match.
Now, and doctor, we only have linear scratch marks that you say are decomposition on Ms. Green's neck.
I did.
Don't see any similar injuries anywhere else on her body, do we?
I don't recall any.
Doctor, you said there were potentially two causes of death, or I'm sorry, manners of death in this case. What are they?
To me, the two reasonable manner of death determinations here would be either undetermined, since we don't know what caused her death.
Or
It may be very fair to say that we don't really know how her death occurred, therefore her manner of death could be undetermined. And given the circumstances of how she was recovered in the trunk of the car, I think many medical examiners would say that circumstantially that is indicative of someone who came to her death at the hands of another, and that would be a manner of death of homicide. I think both of those are reasonable choices in this case.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, sir.
Redirect.
Thank you, Art. Just briefly. Dr. Arden, in your review of the documentation that was provided to you, the images and everything from the medical examiner's office, did you see any evidence which would lead you to believe that Theresa Green had been slammed into a drywall wall?
No, I saw no such blunt trauma that would suggest a scenario like that.
Did you see any gypsum dust on any part of her body.
I do not recall seeing anything that looked like that.
And by gypsum, I mean the actual material of which drywall is manufactured and which presumably would get on you if you went through a wall made out of gypsum.
I'm familiar with drywall and what it looks like and feels like, so I understood the question.
Okay. Doc, do you have any recollection of how tall, what Theresa Green's height was reflected in the report?
I haven't committed to memory. I thought it was somewhere around 5'4".
That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any questions on behalf of the jury? May this witness be excused.
Yes, ma'am.
You're free to go, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Jesus.
Defense, you may call your next witness.
Defense for us, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can conclude the evidence in this case in about half an hour or so, but I need to take up something outside your presence with the attorneys. And I would like to conclude the evidence so that when we come back tomorrow, we can do closing arguments. So I'm going to ask that you step into the jury room for about 10 minutes. Do not discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss it with anyone else. Leave your pads and pens on the chairs. They will be there when you return. And do not do any independent research while you're away from us.
Are we exiting?
I'm a little different. I'm not in the middle. I feel like he should be at that defense table.
Mr. Self, since
If I-
you're resting, I just need to ensure that your client understands that he has the right to testify if he wishes. All right, Mr. Hunter, you're already under oath, sir. Do you understand that you have the absolute right to testify in this trial if you want to do so? And you have the right to have the jury use the same rules when they're considering your testimony that they use when they're considering the other testimony in the case. Do you understand that? You also have the absolute right not to testify if that is your wish. Do you understand? And you have the right not to have the jury draw any inference of guilt if you exercise your right to remain silent. Do you understand? And while your attorneys should talk to you about the decision, and they may have opinions regarding whether you should testify or not, do you understand that the decision regarding whether to testify or not is yours and yours alone to make? And is it your desire not to testify in this matter?
Ain't Gerhardt's ass on
You may.
Hawaii on, ain't it? I need to go watch that. Gerard. I'm gonna call him Gerard. I mean, on one hand, it's like you already doing 110 years. You just got a free trip from California to Florida.
All right, Mr. Hunter?
No, I'm not going to testify.
All right.
Ooh,
Thank you
sir, you
very
got
much.
scared for a second.
And State, do you have a rebuttal witness?
Can we have a few minutes to consult on?
You may. And I assume the defense is renewing their motion for judgment of acquittal
We are, Your Honor,
on the same grounds.
on the same.
Perfect. And my ruling would be the same. All right, we will take 5 minutes.
I don't think they need a rebuttal witness for anything. I really don't. Yeah, Kathy, that's what I'm saying. I believe that he should be over at that defendant's table because there was no reason for you to be driving that woman's car and she was in the back of it. Absolutely not. So there's some guilt around there, but I still don't understand how they did not take the DNA of Mr. Butler and anybody else that was out there. To be honest, just everybody that was at the party, only because you never know what you was gonna come up with, and two, at least Mr. Butler helped dispose of her body, whether he knew why he was following him or not. There's no reason for me to follow you nowhere at 3 o'clock in the morning and take an hour to do so. And now you got me driving from Orlando to Sanford. I'm not crossing not a city line. I don't care if I live next to the city line at 3 o'clock in the morning to follow you because you need a favor. And then when I'm following you, you can get back in the car with me talking about I effed up. Get your ass out this car. I'm calling the law. Don't get in this car with me. And you better hope I unlock the doors while we sitting out there at that Walgreens, because you're going to tell me why the hell you just woke me up out my sleep before I let you in this car with me. John helped him drop that body off, period, point blank. And you can't tell me they didn't hear that thrashing and crashing about. It's one thing to hear hooting and hollering. It's one thing to hear a bunch of arguing, but you know when you hear a tussle. And did he just say she was 5'4"? Yeah, I believe he has something to do with it. I would not be voting for this man to get the final destination. He would get another extended stay, and I would say y'all should just left him in California. Ain't nobody ask a question. Ain't nobody say shit till Monday. So now I don't even believe you were protecting her son from knowing what the heck happened because it was a kid. And I said myself, I would not have told no kid about their mama being drunk, their mama being in a fight, their mama falling down those steps. I wouldn't have said that. I would have said that to her mother. But at the end of the day, now it sounds like you was hiding what was going on, just like you was trying to cover it up so that nobody know, or your job didn't find out about you being in an employee living situation or in a living situation that was afforded to you because you were an employee of the hospital, and you just lie about anything happening. So you were just gonna lie anyway. So somebody ain't telling the truth, as Pop would say, something in the wash ain't clean. Something ain't right. And it wasn't just her. And she sounded like she was a firecracker, drunk all night because she slapped the shit out of Joe's ass, didn't she? So I believe she was too much for one person to handle. I'm sure. And she about 5'4". I'm sure anybody trying to keep her somewhere she didn't want to be or do something to her that she didn't want happen, I'm sure that was like a spider on a monkey. They couldn't catch her. They couldn't figure it out. They had to do something to her. Yeah, I'm starting to feel like they was covering themselves by not telling, because she should have at least told her mama. They should have at least told the mama. But instead, they skipped over all that and lied to the police. No, thank you. And this guy is on live dancing and talking stuff to people. So on Facebook yesterday, the news, they didn't come back yet. Why don't they have the sound on? The news put out 2 people as a person of interest about this. Tommy.
right, you can be seated. Defense is rested. State, do you have any rebuttal?
We do not, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that closes the evidence in this case. I'm going to keep the attorneys here and we're going to go over jury instructions. I'm going to send you home for the evening. When you get back in the morning, we will have closing arguments and then the jury will go out to deliberate. Same instructions I've already given you. Do not discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss it with anyone else. Do not do any independent research while you're away from us. I would ask that you be back here in the morning at 9 a.m. and we'll start with closing arguments in the morning. Does anyone have any questions? All right, seeing none, I'll see you back in the morning. Leave your pads and pens on the chairs.
They had to jump. Joseph too short and too slow. I'm sure he ain't slow. And I'm sure it took every piece of that big man's being to keep that woman up off of Joe's ass. That's how they went down them steps, because he couldn't control it.
You may be seated. All right. Does everyone have the copy of the jury instructions that were
Say it,
sent
just
to
hearsay.
all of us by Mr. Buxman?
All right, guys. So it looks like what they're getting ready to do is go into the jury instructions, which we're going to have to listen to tomorrow morning during the actual right before closing. So closing arguments and deliberations tomorrow. In the meantime, in between time, I'm going to go ahead and get my lunch on, get to my meeting that starts in 7 minutes. And I'm also going to go over there in Hawaii and peek in on Gerhardt's ass. Okay. So I will see everybody in the morning, 6 a.m. on my side of things. Help me and Chaz. We all better pray for them. Make sure y'all keep Mel and Mariah in your prayers. If you did not see it this morning, Mel has posted. There was confirmation that Mariah was diagnosed with cancer. And so she started her treatments and they're taking you on their journey online. So if you throw up those yellow hearts, if you're a millionaire, Anna J. Sayer, if you support Miss Mel, if you watch WTF, all of those good things. So I apologize. That's kind of what's been, making sure everybody was good before we jumped into some commitments. And as you can see, Mel was not able to make commitments without those confirmations. So pray for Mel, pray for Mariah, and one day we'll be saying she's a survivor of this. All right. See everybody in the morning, and I'm going to sneak over to Hawaii during this meeting. Y'all have a good one.